Chair lays out HB 1365 and recognizes its author, Chairman Lucio, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, appreciate your time this evening. I know there's quite a bit of people registered to testify on this bill, and I've worked with them last session. We had a wonderful hearing, a tremendous heartfelt testimony, and before I speak to the specifics of this bill, I just want to tell you how I ended up here today. In 2017, like many of us, I'm rushing to my office to get a quick bite to eat and get back to the House floor. And in my lobby were two really nice ladies, and they were with the mamas, and I hadn't heard of the mamas before. And they asked me for 2 minutes of my time. And typically, to try to guard my time, I asked them if they had scheduled an appointment. And they said, no, we haven't. And I almost walked away saying, well, if you don't mind, ma'am, I got to get back to the House floor. Please meet with my staff. But something in me said, Eddie, just meet with these ladies. And so we went into my office, and what should have been a 5-minute conversation turned into about a 2-hour heartfelt emotional session with these wonderful people. And I learned about what they deal with every day with their family members. And what struck me was I'm a father of very young children, even younger at the time, and I looked at them and their situation through the lens of a father. And I am blessed with 2 healthy children who are actually texting me tonight, asking me how my day was, and my son telling me he lost his first tooth. And if the tooth fairy's coming tonight. And I'm extremely blessed to have 2 healthy children. But if one of them was not healthy and this medicine could help them, there would be nothing to stand in my way to make sure that they got the care that they needed. So I feel for these families, and I've worked really hard over the interim to create what I think is the best, most progressive, most comprehensive way, responsible way to expanding the compassionate use program. What HB 1365 seeks to do is to authorize medical cannabis possession and use for individuals suffering from debilitating medical conditions to provide them with appropriate treatment options. Debilitating conditions are defined in the bill, and it's enumerated. And what's also defined are symptoms. So what cannabis does is it doesn't treat the disease that we are enumerating in the bill. It treats symptoms that are associated with that disease. If we limit our bill to only certain conditions that are, and we don't include symptoms as part of the eligible group of things that are to participate in the compassionate use program, I think we're missing a tremendous opportunity to help as many people as we can. It places a significant focus on developing safeguards to ensure public safety. Our bill provides for independent third-party testing, which is extremely important. We need to make sure that what is getting in the hands of these patients is the best, most effective medicines. We're going to offer up a committee substitute after meeting with the governor's office, after meeting with Chairman Click's office, stakeholders. We're continuing to refine this legislation to make it the most meaningful, effective, and acceptable to our body. We are creating a board that not only will be responsible for research, but what we hope will grow into a board that will essentially take on the responsibility of adding more symptoms and conditions that can be treated in the future. And Chairman Frank, what I don't want is every session for these families to have to come and talk about their condition and their family and their loved ones that are suffering and put it in our hands to add these conditions to the compassionate use program. What I hope this board will do is be the central focus of developing and accumulating, compiling the latest research, and then provide that information to the body and make decisions on adding more conditions. We shouldn't have to pick winners and losers every session. And that is what we're faced with if we do not pass a comprehensive bill this session. We need to create a framework to allow the science to dictate what symptoms we treat moving forward, but take it out of our hands and put it in a body that is comprised of doctors, health professionals, and those appointed by numerous the House, the Senate, and the governor's office to do the work undistracted, unlike the way we are during a session, and move forward in a comprehensive way. There are 3 panels that I'm going to ask to come forth at the beginning of the testimony who can touch on the things that we're trying to do and the work we've done this interim to get to where we are today with the bill. And with that, I know we have a long night ahead of us. I'll answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Representative Lucio. Members, any questions for Chairman Lucio?
Chairman Lucio, I appreciate
Yes.
I really do appreciate the work that you've done on this, and I really do think the more we treat it as medicine, the more it does honestly get out of our hands, because we have an entire system set up to handle making decisions on what is prescribed and what is not.
Yes, sir.
I don't know exactly what that looks like, but because you've worked on this a lot longer, this is fairly new to me, although obviously the medical and Medicaid and all that stuff is, but it does seem like the more we can set it up, and I know yours is set up similar to that, but it almost seems like it ought to be the same. It probably can't happen this session, but as similar as we can set it up, I think that makes sense to people. The prescribing, there's already risks, rewards with all different kinds of medicine, and in many ways this really, and honestly when I compare it to opioids, it appears to be a whole lot safer.
Right.
So anyway,
we need, so in 2015 when we passed the Compassionate Use Act to today, 4 years later, a tremendous amount of progress has been made in terms of the stigma associated with this plant, with this healing plant. In 2015, even I was hesitant. I didn't know how that was going to proceed back home, having to do anything with marijuana. I grew up in the Just Say No Nancy Reagan 1980s, right? But if you look at the polling on this particular issue, just in the 4 years where we passed the Compassionate Use Act, it is polling off the charts. I'd put it head to head with any other issue that you can think of, and overwhelmingly in favor of us expanding the compassionate use program.
Right.
I can post anything. I could post a great family photo and I get a few likes and a few comments. If I post anything with medicinal marijuana or cannabis, I've been corrected on the political correctness.
Yeah, that one.
I will have thousands of likes, thousands of comments, and thousands of people messaging me on Facebook talking about what a great thing Texas can do to help families. So overwhelming public support. Now, what we need to do to thread the needle, like many of the families say, in order for us to do something meaningful, it has to be done with doctors, I believe. And so that we have great integrity in the medication we're distributing, and that it interacts with the other medications for these particular conditions effectively.
Yeah, because I do think that is the political confusion, honestly, is the prescription doctor issue versus the, hey, everybody grow and use, and honestly the consequences end up being significantly different as well. So,
and it could be that may happen at some point. Backed by science, there could be a strain of cannabis that has little to no risk for that in the future. But what we know now, what the science shows us now, is, and if you haven't visited the cultivating centers that we have, and there's 3 licensed in Texas, it is top quality manufacturing and production of tested product that makes an impact in these families' lives.
okay. Thank you, Chairman.
Members, anybody? Representative Lucio, I want to thank you. You have visited with me numerous times on the floor
Yes, I have.
about this issue. You're very passionate about it. And if there's one thing I know about you, is that if you're passionate about something, you're going to make something happen. So we thank you so much.
It's all the coffee and energy drinks, I think. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. If not, no further questions. Chair calls up Dr. Askew, William Martin, and Dr. Marks. We'll start with the panel from my left to your right, and we'll reserve the questions of the members up here until after all the panel testifies, if that's okay.
Sure.
Yeah, we're just trying to move things along as quickly as we can. Have a long night, a lot of witnesses. Please state your full name for the record, your position on the bill, and who you represent.
Yes, my name is William Martin. I direct and represent the Drug Policy Program at Rice University's Baker Institute for Public Policy, as well as myself, and I'm speaking in support of HB 1365.
Very good. Thank you. Proceed, sir.
You will have already in your binders the paper that my colleague and I, Dr. Catherine Neal Harris, has written about a longer section, and I've just handed out an op-ed that appeared in the Houston Chronicle and probably the Express News today.
And we appreciate that. We appreciate you not reading the whole thing.
I don't plan to do that, and you also have other testimony. What I want to talk about mostly is it's important to, in talking about this, is to see what it is that makes cannabis a real medicine, and not the legalization of medical cannabis is not just a step on a stepping stone to legalize recreational cannabis. Beginning in 1965, and when starting with and supported for decades by the National Institutes of Health, Israeli scientist Dr. Raphael Mechoulam and his colleagues have turned Israel into what is called the Holy Land of medical marijuana. But what they have done is to, first of all, starting with just the cannabis plant and saying, what's going on in this plant? Dr. Mechoulam isolated THC. Later on, they isolated CBD. And then over a couple of decades, they figured something out. In our bodies, we have receptors, they called them tetrahydrocannabinol and then cannabidiol, naming it after the plant Cannabis sativa. They figured out that we have in our bodies what they call cannabis receptors, and they named them CB1 and CB2. The first one is in the brain and throughout the central nervous system. Others are in the gastrointestinal system and the immune system. As the Canadian magazine The Scientist said, your bodies are teeming with weed receptors. Now they saw that in these plants where they've been isolating these parts, they saw that these elements, that in our bodies we had molecules, cannabinoid producers that were just like those things. And so they, what is this receptor here? And they said, we presume that cannabinoid receptors did not exist on the existence, did not depend for their existence on an external plant. And so what they did was to assume, to see that together these receptors and cannabinoids constitute the endocannabinoid system. And the key reason that exists in our bodies is to maintain homeostasis, to keep things on an even keel by reducing pain, reducing inflammation, controlling nausea, uplifting from depression and anxiety, and moderating and curing some diseases. When the endogenous system is not strong enough to produce to do this, then external cannabinoids can bring things back into order. Now, some efforts by pharmaceutical companies have tried to take one of these, THC or CBD, and just use that one. Dr. Mechoulam said he prefers to think of it as the entourage effect, that using the whole plant works better than just isolating one or two or three chemicals. I have talked to veterans who have talked to me about going to VA, having the VA hand out pills like Skittles and leaving them as pilled up zombies. And the cannabis, smoking, as my friend Major Bass has said, and others the same story, it is not a gateway to other drugs, but release from alcohol and giving them their lives back, giving themselves back to their children. And you've heard the mamas, who are friends of mine as well, and have interviewed them. They talk about how it enables them to be able to manage their children in a way that is at least reasonably acceptable.
Mr. Martin, we really appreciate that explaining that, and you all get to explain even further with further questions. Representative Lucio is going to have a lot of questions for you, but we want to, and I do too, at least one or two. But let's go on to the next panelist if we can. Please state your name for the record, your position on the bill, and who you represent.
I'm Dr. Robert Marks, pain management physician here in Austin. I am in support of this bill heavily, and I represent hundreds of doctors with whom I've spoken. I do so on behalf of over 28 million Texas patients, whether they need this now or they may need it one day in the future, including all of you and your families, including Representative Lucio's child. Congratulations on the tooth loss. I'm a Texas pain physician. I have dual board certifications in both pain management as well as anesthesiology. I've treated thousands of patients with debilitating illnesses, and I've seen the consequences of the opioid epidemic firsthand. And it's not pretty. It's not good. I first learned about medical cannabis during my grand rounds during my fellowship in pain management at Texas Tech back in 2011 and 2012. And I'll be honest, initially, when I chose that as my topic, I just thought it was going to be entertaining dinner party conversation and kind of cool. It wasn't until I really dove into the science behind cannabis, realized not only the safety associated with the drug, but its potential impact, not only in treating all of these different ailments, but also in what it's able to do to actually decrease various types of incidents of various types of maladies, including multiple types of cancer. I continue to follow all of the scientific literature because I became a very heavy supporting advocate of medical cannabis at that point in time. I follow scientific literature, I analyze, I scrutinize, I discuss this regularly with medical doctors as well as healthcare professionals pretty much anytime I have the opportunity to. I've spoken with thousands of them about this. I also cleared my entire clinic schedule to be able to be here today.
Thank you.
So it's just to let you know how dedicated I truly am for this. It's not fun to do. But with that said, I want to be clear. I have zero financial interest in Texas cannabis. Absolutely zero. In fact, if this type of legislation were to pass, it would probably negatively impact my bottom line at the end of the day. According to CDC data, 130 Americans die daily of opioid overdoses. Now, when you look at census data, that extrapolates to approximately 11, a little bit more than 11 Texans on a daily basis. Now, they die because they stop breathing. States with medical cannabis bills have approximately 25% reduction in opioid overdose deaths. They also have a significant reduction in non-fatal opioid overdoses, emergency room visits associated with opioids, and prescription numbers for opioids. Medicare data also shows significant reductions in prescriptions for anxiety, depression, nausea, psychosis, seizures, sleep disorders, and spasticity. In a time when opioid overdose is the #1 cause of accidental death in our country, it is a major ethical challenge to restrict patients from an adjunct drug that not only decreases patients' demand for opioids, but also has a significant better safety profile. Cannabis has zero effect on breathing and heart rate, which is the reason there's never been a documented fatal overdose of opioids. That is cannabis. Cannabis.
Yes.
That is in contrast to drugs that do exist, such as Xanax, Valium, opioids, Ambien. There are countless drugs that are significantly more dangerous, including even anti-inflammatories that increase the risk of coronary artery disease and stomach ulcers.
Doctor, thank you so much. We heard a lot of that earlier this morning. I find it fascinating. But if we could move on to the next panelist, and then there'll be some questions for you. Thank you.
Okay, because I will say I had a lot of other perspectives from a practicing pain doctor to share.
I'm sure you do.
I'll look forward to the questions.
But we have a lot of witnesses tonight. And
I have a lot of respect for you guys, so
thank you
you
very much. Yes, ma'am. Please state your name for the record, your position on the bill, and who you represent.
Dr. Wendy Askew. I am a regenerative medicine physician from San Antonio, Texas. I represent my patients.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I thought I did register for
You
this
registered earlier this morning on another bill.
I registered for, it was my intent to register for both in favor of, in support of HB 1365.
Well, can you?
Yes, I'm happy to re-register.
Oh, yeah. Would you do that very quickly,
Absolutely.
please? And while we wait on that, let me be the first one to ask a question, and I think I'll ask you, Doctor.
Well, they're both doctors.
Well, I understand that. But, well, now I understand that, but that's not how you're registered, so I apologize. Doctors. I am a lawyer, but I have a biology chemistry degree, and I spent quite a bit of time in biochemistry. And so I find the testimony concerning the biochemical makeup of cannabis and its extracts quite fascinating, and that's why your testimony is very, very fascinating to me. My question is why don't we hear more about it concerning the biochemical makeup of cannabis in that regard?
Well, we're starting to.
Your name, sir?
William Martin. We are starting to. There's a good bit available, especially on the web. You have to be looking for it. But I'm hearing more and more. 2 or 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, when I was working on an article for Texas Monthly about PTSD, and it was asked, well, why does it work? Well, it just works. And then I said, I need to find out why this works. And that's when I learned about the endocannabinoid system. I said, why don't we hear that? And that's why in my testimony, what I wrote was that we need to start with understanding why this works. And I think we do need to say more and more about it, so that and these op-ed pieces, the report that I've written that my colleague and I have written, we start off. This is what we need to start with: is understanding what's going on here and why it works.
Well, I will be reading that. I promise you, Doctor.
I would say from
name again for the record.
Robert Marks.
Very good.
I would say from a slightly different standpoint, a couple of different factors. One, I can tell you, at least in the state of Texas, doctors and professionals in general are exceedingly scared to come forward and actually discuss this. This topic is taboo amongst doctors with patients because, quite frankly, we're scared to be able to discuss this. I'm scared to be here right now. To be quite honest, I had a lot of stuff in my testimony last night, and I went through that with my wife with a fine-tooth comb last night, and she's like, "No, don't say that. You're gonna you're putting yourself too far out there." And I feel ethically that it's appropriate to come out here because I know and understand my ethical duty as a physician to come out and do this.
So you basically explained to us, at least in a nutshell, why then, at least somebody like me who has this background from many years ago and spent quite a bit of time in the lab, why I hadn't read more about it, heard more about it, but hopefully we will in the future. Now if we could turn to the next witness.
Dr. Adrian Askew, one more comment to this point. One reason.
Just a second.
Her name's Adrian. She's here.
Adrian.
Very good. Your position on the bill, who you represent?
I represent myself and my patients, and I am in favor of the bill. Thank
Very
you,
good. Very
Representative Lucio.
Thanks.
To the point, one reason why you don't hear more about it is because it is not taught in medical schools. So physicians are unaware of its existence, and it takes physicians to step out of their comfort zone, to go fly in the face of their colleagues who are telling them there's no research, and pursue at their time, cost, and personal risk education and knowledge about this system. And most doctors don't feel like they have the time or the inclination to learn about it. So that's one editorial comment.
Well, thank you so much. I'll turn it over to Representative Lucio.
Thank you. Well, man, I'm an environmentalist, but we killed some trees. I will recycle this. One of the things I hear when I'm trying to get support for this bill is we can only support conditions where there's significant medical research. And what I'm starting to understand is saying we're only going to allow a certain condition to qualify for participation in the compassionate use program is completely misunderstanding how this or any medicine works, right? Because what medicine does, it doesn't treat a disease, it treats the symptoms of the disease, right? So that's why we elaborated and not just listed conditions in the bill, or at least a substitute will do that. Talk to me about symptoms and interaction, and I think that you're exactly right. When people say there's not enough science, I think there's plenty of science out there. It's how we put it together, doctor, and how we can very simply articulate it so that my colleagues say, okay, well, that makes sense, let's do this.
I would love to address that, Dr. Adrian Askew. Just for the record,
Yes, would you identify yourself again, please?
Dr. Adrian Askew.
And I ask you, when each one of you testifies, it's important for the record we do that.
Of
I don't
course.
want to interrupt you.
Of course. I haven't given my 2-minute testimonial, but just addressing the questions.
Go ahead.
And to that point, there are nearly 20,000 peer-reviewed publications on the PubMed website specifically citing cannabinoid medicine and how it works to affect different systems. And I would be delighted to explain to you how it works at the regulatory level that Dr. Williams spoke about to bring our imbalanced systems, which are disease states, whether it's lupus, psoriasis, anxiety, PTSD, how it works on those cells involved to bring them back into balance. It cannot leave them permanently in balance, but it can restore balance temporarily, so you need to continue dosing. It doesn't provide a cure, but it provides a safe, effective, nearly risk-free, side effect-free therapeutic option for patients who I think deserve it for a variety of conditions.
And
Dr.
does-
I'm sorry,
go ahead.
Dr. Askew, you did not finish laying out or didn't finish your opening with
I
us?
didn't give my
Yeah, I'm
words.
sorry.
No, you're fine.
We went off on this other tangent, but would you please finish
Yes.
that up, and then I'll turn it over to
My 2
Representative
minutes.
Lucio.
I was going to speak from the standpoint of the autoimmune conditions. So I'm a veteran of the United States Air Force. I'm a physician. I'm a mother. I have an autoimmune condition called psoriasis, developed while I was on active duty, so I am assigned a 90% disability rating. My condition is where my immune system attacks my skin, and at its most severe form, over 80% of my body, my skin and my joints were involved, and the skin was replaced with thick scales, plaques, red, inflamed areas, and I was treated with the conventional therapeutics for autoimmune diseases, which carry side effects to include risks for tuberculosis, lymphomas, other cancers, kidney and liver damage, and bone marrow suppression. I was fortunate never to develop any of those conditions and that I had decent response. But then I began to seek alternative therapies. Stem cells provided an excellent response under the Right to Try Act that you all passed a few years back. And then once that effect wore off, I began experimenting with cannabinoids. And CBD oil has allowed me to wean completely off of Humira and have better control of my psoriatic symptoms than in the past 19 years. And so I have a personal as well as a professional academic interest in this medicine. It's left me very, very happy and side effect free, and without my $1,200 a month copays for the Humira injections. So I have both personal and professional interests. 20% of the population suffer from autoimmune diseases, and if we had the time, I would love to explain at the mechanistic level how it works on our immune system and at the level of each organ system to bring those systems back into balance and to prevent our immune system from its hyperactive incorrect responses and attacking self instead of just foreign invaders.
Thank you so much. Representative Lucio, members, y'all have any questions? Lucio?
I do.
Yeah.
And the reason why I do, and I don't want anyone testifying after this to take offense if I'm not asking the same questions. The reason I'm asking these questions is the science and what doctors are telling us is extremely important for me to go and advocate for these bill with my colleague. That is the tipping point. What is the science? What are doctors telling us we can do with this? So I need to extrapolate from you as much information as I can, and frankly work with you after this to continue to understand and articulate. I'm a lawyer. I went to law school because I wasn't smart enough to go to medical school. So if you can explain it to me so that I can regurgitate this. And there's a few points I want to get through. Tell me why this is safer than opioids so that I could explain it to my 9-year-old.
I would love to address that. The biggest factor associated with it being safer than opioids, flat out, the brainstem, which is the part of our brain that controls our drive to breathe and heart rate, has almost zero receptors for cannabinoids. For that reason, it plain and simply does not affect it. One could utilize as much cannabis as they could possibly muster, and yet they would still not stop breathing. Their heart rate would not be modified. They would not have an overdose death. Whereas opioids, as we all know, definitively does cause the respiratory depression. When considering the relative safety, especially compared to opioids, we need to consider as physicians, and this is one of the reasons that I feel so strongly that doctors need to be able to determine the indication so that we're able to practice medicine just like we do with any other FDA drug to be able to prescribe off-label for an indication, is the fact that it is safe to try for any condition, and if it fails to help, that's okay. It doesn't have to help. You don't have to continue utilizing it as a patient. But to strictly wait until we have an indication for it and then be allowed to try it just to find that it may or may not work, I find a little bit dangerous. But ultimately, the short answer to the question is it doesn't affect heart rate, and it doesn't affect breathing, which it's compared to even benzodiazepines and lots of other drugs, not even just opioids. It's safer than most.
Okay. And in terms of addictive qualities, and any of you, please answer. Just in comparison to opioids, it seems like what I take from that testimony is that it's hard to overdose or almost impossible to overdose on cannabis, but because opioids can affect breathing and heart, there is a chance that even the first time using opioids, if used irresponsibly, you could have a problem. But talk about the long term, and I want all of you all to weigh in if you could.
I would love to address the opioid component and then get y'all's take on it as well, just because I do deal with this fairly regularly. For what it's worth, I'm not one of the pain doctors that regularly prescribes opioids. Very few of my patients are actually on opioids comparatively. But the way I discuss it with my patients when it comes down to opioids is you start out, you take one pill once a day. It's just like caffeine, just like coffee. You can have one small cup of coffee once a day. You could do that for your entire life, and that'll always give you a little bit of pick-me-up, your morning coffee. When you start having a cup of coffee twice a day, it might not work as well. Then you get to a point where you're having a cup of coffee every 4 hours. Then you need 2 cups of coffee every 4 hours. Then you end up switching to Red Bull. Then it's 2 Red Bulls. And then what you end up figuring out, and everybody that's gone to medical school and law school, and probably everybody else in the room as well, realizes that at some point you're actually more tired from all of that caffeine than you would be by not having any caffeine. And we all know, with caffeine at least, I got to get off of all this caffeine. But opioids do the same thing to the body. It stops working after a certain amount of time. But just like with caffeine, if we stop drinking that caffeine, we feel even worse. Opioids don't do that with energy, comparatively with caffeine, which does do that with energy. Opioids do that with pain. So when you take opioids and then you stop taking opioids, you simply hurt more. So you have this feeling like you truly require that opioid medication in order to maintain pain control. Now, I'm not going to say that cannabis, I know technically they say there's not an actual physical addiction to cannabis, but just like so many other types of drugs, there's no question that somebody that utilizes cannabis and finds that it actually yields some degree of benefit might have some properties that make somebody actually seek and desire to continue to use that. However, again, when comparing the relative safety compared to opioids and the fact that a lot of the detrimental effects associated with cannabis, such as the psychological effects, start to wane with long-term use, and you continue to get a lot of the actual clinical benefits. The benefits for cannabis do maintain themselves. I do feel I should probably turn some of this over to the other guys.
And I am going to be mindful of time, so I want to get to another point that I wanted to cover on the medical panel. Talk to me about THC and different levels of THC and how that impacts the treatment of the very symptoms that we're looking to address in this bill.
Well, THC is what gives you it's the high that made marijuana famous, and that's and if it comes in very small doses, you get less of an effect. If it comes in larger doses, there is more of an effect. It is a possibility there is a possible addiction, or about 9 to 10% of people who use marijuana heavily over time can develop a dependence on it. With other drugs as well, part of that, a significant part of that, can be genetic vulnerability. You can have, just like you have alcoholics in your family, you're more likely to develop an alcohol problem if you drink.
Yeah. And I'm not just speaking to addiction. What I want you to address is our bodies have different deficiencies, and one of the deficiency and I think cannabinoid deficiency is a deficiency that where you need the use of this.
That's right, to bring it back.
So to say 0.5 THC is what is going to help everyone who is in need of this medicine is just frankly not true because of our deficiencies. A 0.5 for me might be well more than enough, but for someone else who has a deficiency, you know where
Yes,
I'm going with
yes.
that, Doctor. Can you address that?
Dr. Adrian Askew,
Yeah.
I can. That is one of the frustrations, even for doctors who do pursue training in cannabis medicine, is the imprecise nature and the inability to state without initiating therapy what level, amount, concentration, ratios, mixtures are going to best suit a patient. We have some ideas for conditions like cancer. You need much higher THC content to slow the development of the abnormal blood vessels that the cancer cells stimulate. But to your point, the cardinal teachings of cannabis medicine are that you start at low concentrations because one dose range will have maybe a completely therapeutic effect for one person with a condition, and another person with the same condition, same height, same weight, same ethnic background, they may require a higher dose, but you have to start low and gradually increase their dose until you achieve a response.
And what is the medical reason that they need a high dose? Talk to me about the deficiency.
I can speak to certain conditions, and for example, we mentioned the cancer lineages and how cancer cells stimulate the growth of abnormal blood vessels so that the cancer cells will be spread and disseminated and metastasize. One of the properties of THC at higher doses is it stops the proliferation of the abnormal blood vessels that the cancer cells are stimulating. It does not affect any of the normal blood vessels. It simply isolates its effect to that abnormal, imbalanced system that is going on. And that is what scientists and doctors, and even Dr. Meshulam's lab, they cannot say, you need this amount, you need that amount. It's frustrating for doctors and for the pharmaceutical industry because we're comfortable with the model of 5 milligrams helps this much and 50 milligrams helps a lot, and that's not how this medicine functions. So it renders it, from the language of one of the other bills, to say 1% THC and 10% CBD. That's not based on any science. Those numbers appear to have been randomly chosen, and doctors who prescribe, recommend, dispense cannabis are usually aware of this, how to dose it and how to begin, and then how to gradually increase it until you find a desired effect and then remain at that level.
That's William Martin. It's the same with CBD and the put just a little tighter than you did. Start low and go slow.
So let's start low and go slow, and don't be afraid to go all the way.
That's right. Just go. And Major Bass was talking about, what was he said? 28%.
Mm-hmm.
18 to 24%.
That's a high concentration.
That's a high concentration. I tend to run at a pretty homeostatic level. I suspect that would be way too much for me. And I experimented with marijuana very timidly in the early 1970s, 5 or 6 times, depending on whether you count the time at Willie Nelson's house when I did not inhale.
God bless Texas.
But that is you just do it until it's working, until you're getting an effect. But this earlier, and I think it's you've talked about working with cancer. You said it only treats symptoms. I can't find the site right now, but I read it and copied it. About a year and a half ago, I was looking. I have 2 cancers that I'm dealing with, and you don't need to feel sorry for me about that. They're serious, but they're being treated well. But I was talking with my doctor, and he was looking on the website, and he showed, and the National Cancer Institute was talking about preclinical, because we don't allow doing in this country, we don't allow the experiments and research on humans nearly as well as they do in Israel. But the preclinical tests and one stuck with me particularly, of glioblastoma, brain cancer, of 29 tests, tumors had been either reduced or emptied or cured in 28 cases. And they were calling for more research. In 2017, the NIH had support for 330 projects, all of them dealing with the endocannabinoid system, with about 140 million. And again, if you go to Israel, there's no shortage of research. We can't do the research here as much because, according to the DEA, cannabis has no medical benefit.
I think I'm only getting one more comment. So, Doc, why don't you wrap it up for us on this panel?
And Dr. Marks, if you just, again, identify yourself when you speak. Thank you.
Again, Dr. Robert Marks. So I was actually just going to expand on actually the entourage effect. There's a lot of discussion that I've heard take place, and I heard take place earlier today. There appears to be a very significant misconception about it only being THC and CBD. First off, you can actually have a product that has the exact same concentration of THC and CBD, the exact same ratio, the exact same concentration, that actually has completely different effects on the patients. And that's based on the other components. They've isolated over 85, I've actually heard numbers up to 113 different cannabinoids. And the way I frequently will describe this when I talk to people about this is it's analogous to the 88 keys on a piano. You can have my 4-year-old just hitting middle C over and over again. That might be just CBD, that might be just CHC. You can also have somebody playing the piano. You can have Beethoven playing the piano, you can have Marilyn Manson playing the piano, and you can have George Strait playing the piano. I'll be better at the guitar. But the fact is, I would not prescribe Representative Guerra Marilyn Manson. Maybe I would. I don't know. I don't know you all that well. But the fact is.
Because he's not represented.
Well, in that case, maybe I would give him Marilyn. Maybe he could have Marilyn Manson.
Musical chairs on you. Yeah.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's okay.
But there's a very significant distinction between these, and so first off, the full panel testing is actually I feel a fairly critical component of how this could actually ultimately come out. The other thing is just taking into consideration the fact that it's our ethical duty as medical doctors to be able to actually discuss this with patients. When we're up here discussing this with you guys, we're I don't know if we're under oath or not, but we're certainly here doing what I act as if we're under oath.
Right.
But
you are. Yeah.
But good. But when we're talking to patients, we have to be very, very careful about what we say and how we say it. We can have a discussion about it. We have an ethical duty. We've got a First Amendment right. We've got recommendations, both federal judges that have said before, we have to be truthful with our patients. We need to speak to them about their best interest, answer their questions, discuss with them about everything, especially when it comes to their safety. But the fact is, patients are reading about this. It's available in every state surrounding us. It's able to be flown in from California, where they're not restricting it at the airports. We're not going to be able to stop it from coming in here. So not only patients are reading about it, they're trying it. They're asking their doctors about it. People are reading about it. People are using it as medicine. They know that there's minimal risk. They know that it may help with so many different medical maladies. They know that the literature is vast. They know it's legal in 33 states. And as a doctor in the state of Texas, I will declare personally that this is, in fact, a medicine. This should be an option. All I ask is you guys please, on behalf of patients and doctors,
thank you for waiting on this time.
Thank you, Dr. Marks. Appreciate you. Any other questions for these professionals? Thank you all. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Thank you all for your time.
Okay, we're going to call up our next panel so that. All right, the chair now calls Anna Lee, Chase Bearden, Glenn Hayes. I'm sorry, Mays. I love my glasses in the back room, so bear with me. My arm's not long enough to hold this up. And April Martinez. Ann Lee, Chase Bearden, Glenn Mays, and April Martinez. While they're coming up here, I'll just announce, for those of you with us, we have 68 witnesses registered to testify on this bill. 69, we've picked up an additional one. So we, after this panel, I believe we'll have 62. Again, I'm without my glasses. So we'll have 62. So we are going to ask that you limit your testimony to those 2 minutes, just so that everyone has an opportunity to testify, because with the number of witnesses we have, that will clearly take 2.5 hours or more to get through the witness testimony on the bill. So with that, ma'am, we will start with you on this end. If you will tell us your name, who you represent, and whether you're testifying on, for, or against the bill.
My name is Ann Lee, full name Ann Edwards Lee. My husband and I founded RAMP, Republicans Against Marijuana Prohibition. Prohibition is not conservative at all.
And
That
Ms.
is-
Lee, you're testifying for the bill?
I'm testifying anything that will get us to where we tax control and regulate cannabis like we do penicillin.
Yes, ma'am. So you're in favor of the bill?
That's felt for it. I'm told it's so for. That's for it.
And you're representing yourself as well as RAMP?
As well as RAMP, right, correct.
Thank you. And please go ahead with proceed with your testimony.
My dream and my prayer is that we tax control and regulate cannabis like we do penicillin or any other good medicine. It is good. There are not many of you left, but I applaud you all who stayed. Do you all not believe that cannabis is a good medicine?
You know I do.
Are you willing to say you do not?
You know, I'm new to the topic, and I think this is very interesting.
Have you read the book, The New Jim Crow?
I have not. No, ma'am.
You should.
Very good.
Because to me, I grew up with Jim Crow. I will be 90 this year. And I had hoped when I first started doing this that I would live long enough to see this happen. That we tax control and regulate cannabis like we do penicillin. And now I'm wondering if it's going to happen while I'm still here. Because I am 90 in September. And I do not have a prepared statement, but you talk about speaking from the heart, that's what I am doing.
Yeah,
because we need...
We appreciate that. You're doing great.
We have... This is a great country. We were born with the defect of slavery. It took a war to get rid of that, and that didn't even do it because then we had Jim Crow. And I remember Jim Crow. When I was growing up, whites and blacks could not go to school together. That was the law. That's bad law. What do we do with bad law? We try to change it. And that's what I'm thinking you all should be willing to do. Change bad law.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. We
That's all.
appreciate your testimony. Thank you. Thank you. Ma'am, will you, and folks, we understand your passion. We feel it. We understand it. Just for the sake of getting through the 62 people, if we could try to limit the comments. And one other thing I will say, we have some very precise rules on how the House and the committees operate. And if you do shout something from the audience, if you shout some information without being recognized and without registering on the bill, that can cause problems for the bill. I know you all care a lot about the bill, so please do not, out of sake of preserving the process for this bill, if you're for the bill, you don't want to shout out anything from the audience, okay? So, ma'am, if you would please tell us who you are, who you represent, and whether you're testifying on, for, or against the bill. Thank you.
My name is April Martinez. I represent myself, and I am testifying in support of the bill.
Thank you. Please share with us what you want to share.
I served in the Army for 9 years, and I was retired early due to an illness. I was deployed to Afghanistan and returned in May of '07 after a 16-month deployment. And I started to experience headaches, first intermittently, and then very soon after started 24/7 and went to full-fledged migraines. Next month will be 12 years since I've returned, and I cannot remember the last time in the last 12 years where I have been pain-free. Pain is a significant part of my illness, but it is only one part. I suffer from a lot of cognitive issues, such as brain fog. I have speech issues where I either forget words or I'll say a word unintentionally. Reading and comprehension have become an issue to where I had to end going to college to finish my degree in 2010 because just the act of reading physically hurt my brain. I was retired in 2011 because of the illness, and I have still not been able to go to work because of all the issues that I have. I have had to alter my life in every single way imaginable. And every time I go to a doctor, the first thing they go to is, well, you have to de-stress. So I've let go of everything. I used to be heavily into volunteerism ever since I was a young child. I have volunteered at the NICU at Darnell. I helped on the day of the shooting when Post was closed down, and I went over and helped fed the babies. I am a former foster parent, and me and my husband, we were dual military and foster parents here in Texas, fostered and adopted twins who both have special needs, and I have 2 children. When I was in Washington, I was able to use medical cannabis under recommendation of one of my physicians, and for about 9 months, I was in heaven. I was able to sit and play with my children again, and days I would normally be in my room and locked up, blind shut.
Right.
I was short because I was in pain sometimes with my kids, and when I would use medical cannabis, the brain fog would stop. I could read a book for the first time in years. I had dreams of going back to school to finish my degree.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez. I'm sorry to cut you off. We just have so many, but I appreciate your testimony and very much appreciate your service. And I did hear your point of how you were helped by medical cannabis, and thank you. Sir, would you please tell us your name, who you represent, and whether you're testifying on for or against the bill?
My name is Glenn Mays. I represent my family and all of the medical marijuana refugees from Texas, and I'm for this bill. We left about 3 years ago. I love you. This has been like a huge journey for us and our family. My wife is going to get mad because I went off the script and she edits dissertations. So forgive me, baby. I'll post it on my Facebook. I just want to say that I think with the laws and the timing that we had and the science, I mean, now living in Colorado, it's just blatantly obvious. It's almost gross to even hear some of this stuff that I'm hearing about the lack of research, about low THC. My son's morning regimen, he consists of 20 milligrams of THC with his breakfast, 40 milligrams of THC with his lunch, 100 to 150 milligrams of THC at dinner. And we also do it, and that's an 10-to-1 tincture that we get from Incredibles Wellness. I work at a CBD lab where we process distillate and CBD isolate. I can make tinctures up to 2,500 milligrams. Actually, our lab director just made us one, and I would love to get Mr. Zedler on his left knee. I know his left knee is paining him right now. It would be beneficial to him as well. I kept my grandmother alive for a whole other year using cannabis when I was in Colorado. I knew with opioids and different seizure medications that they have kind of a death cocktail for older people. Whenever they are dying, so to speak, you are going to lose your abilities to understand anything, much less clear your lungs. Once you can't clear your lungs, you're going to get filled up with fluid and pneumonia, and then they'll put you on another little painkiller to make you not want to say bye to anyone. That's what happens, and I gave my grandmother a very, very high THC. When that happened, she had a stroke. She fell down in the hospital. She was in ICU. I did what I had to do, prayed to God, and asked if I needed to do it, and got my answers. And my grandmother was here for a whole nother year. The next day, she was actually in ICU and moved upstairs. And so it was a beautiful situation. All I'm saying is that THC is definitely beneficial, and people need to start looking at that because my son's condition is proof. And he'll be 7 now, and he's beautiful.
Thank you, Mr. Mays. We're glad to hear your son's doing well. Mr. Bearden, you know the plan.
Chase Bearden, the Coalition of Texans with Disabilities, and I am also testifying on my behalf too, along with our organization. We are for the bill, and we really do appreciate y'all taking the time to listen to all these bills. I know this has been ongoing. The last decade I've been here, I never would have thought that I would have seen this at this point. I think you and I both had less gray when we started. But at the same time, our organization, it's a statewide disability organization that really is every type of disability. We have older people, we have younger people, we have kids with developmental disabilities, physical disabilities, veterans groups. There are 17 organizations that signed on to guiding principles we created, which was basically looking at creating a safe, regulated state for us in cannabis to allow people to try and work with their doctors and have that ability to have that one-on-one with their doctor. I know for years, and I know from others that we've talked to, they've always been afraid to talk to their doctor, and that shouldn't be something. I know sitting through how many Health and Human Services Committee meetings have we ever had, having discussions about keeping the whole body healthy is basically the most cost-effective way for us to run a medical system and to give people a better quality of life. We deal with a lot of the families talking to us who THC is one of the big things in it. The current levels of just CBD with a low THC isn't enough. So what they've done when that didn't work for them is they went and got some somewhere else and brought it back and found that their kids' seizures dropped off or that they're healthier and happier. And I think that's hard to say that we're only going to choose one area to work in because we feel more comfortable with that. And I'll end very quickly with myself. 10 years ago, I started taking hydrocodone, an opioid, at 1 a day. As I worked longer and longer hours, I got up to about 6 a day. And as of 6 months ago today, I took my last one, which would have been another 1,080 in this period. But it was me actually being in Colorado and trying one of the drops that was a 1-to-1 ratio. So it's the exact same amount of THC as it is CBD. Because I tried just CBD, it did nothing for my pain. But that night, after 2 drops, my body relaxed enough and the pain subsided that I cut my prescription opioids in half that night. And I continued from that point forward. And I can tell you, I'm healthier. I work longer hours. My boss is happy about that. I've been very open about it with him. I've been very open about it with my family. And I think that's something we have to, as Chairman Guerra said, why aren't we seeing more of this? Because we need leadership like y'all to push it down that we are. So we really appreciate all y'all's work and your time. And I know this will be a long night, so I will end there. Thank y'all.
Any further questions, members? Chair now calls Gregory Fowler, Jacqueline Carey, Amanda Martinez. Is it Martinez? Oh, okay. Amanda Martinez.
She's here.
Thank you very much, and Debbie Branch.
Is there any chance you maybe could give the next door? I've been here like 6 hours and I really need to go outside.
You have time.
I do, okay.
Also, let me remind everybody, if you have written testimony, please just hand it to the clerk. She'll make copies and get it to us. We want to hear your testimony from your heart, please. Reading from your testimony. You know, we've got a lot of witnesses to get through, so it's important that we not read from your statements. Just paraphrase it, please. Talk to us from your heart. That's what we're looking for. We got just 3. Oh. Okay, now the chair calls Gregory Fowler. Please state your name, your position on the bill, and who you represent.
My name is Gregory Fowler, and I support the bill. I'm from Madison County, Texas. I represent myself and my family, my daughter who has Tourette syndrome. So my daughter, in 2017, she was 14 years old, and her motor tics from Tourette syndrome were so bad that she became totally disabled. We were in the hospital at Texas Children's on multiple occasions. Excuse me, she had tried several medicines, such as lorazepam and clonazepam and tetrabenazine. None of them had really any effect on her motor tics, and they all carried a lot of side effects. All of those carry side effect of suicidal ideation. And so it's kind of rough when you take a kid that's already ostracized and made fun of a lot, and then you give her a medicine that gives her depression and makes things even worse for her and doesn't really help her situation as it is. Anyway, so one of the times we were in the hospital, I read an article on the Tourette's Association's website about treatment with cannabis. And so I started looking into it, and through the association and stuff, we talked to several people from out of state that had used it with a lot of success, and so we made the decision to try it because we were running out of options, and we were just going through a real traumatic time in our family, and not only emotionally but financially the costs were getting overwhelming, and so we tried it. And the first time we tried it, we gave her just a minuscule amount, but the effects were noticeable in like less than 5 minutes. She immediately just kind of relaxed. You could see that she relaxed. She took a deep breath. After about 30 minutes, she said, "Can I just go to bed?" She went to sleep and slept the whole night, which was almost impossible for her. Her motor tics would cause her to fall out of the bed and, just have trouble just relaxing to go to sleep. And she slept that first night, and then the next morning, everything was back to the way it was. She started having her tics. So we gave it to her at night for about a week so she could sleep. And then after that, she was doing so much better, we decided that we were just going to start giving it to her, in the morning when she got up. And it was almost a miraculous effect. She's been using it now over a year. She's back in school. She couldn't go to school before. We didn't really want her to go to school because of her condition. The school didn't really want her there.
So you found it helped quite a bit.
Oh, a 180. She was totally handicapped before. She couldn't feed herself because her dexterity in her hand. One hand stayed like this all the time and shook like that.
Thank you.
The other arm flailed.
Thank you so much. We'll move on to the. We'll have questions here once we get the panel. Then thank you so much.
No, that's fine.
Jacqueline Carey.
Yes. Hi.
Please state your name, your position on the bill, and who you represent.
My name's Jacqueline Carey. My position on the bill, I'm for House Bill 1365, and I'm speaking for myself. I have ovarian cancer. I was diagnosed 4 years ago, and if you don't know much about ovarian cancer, it's not a good cancer to get. It's not one that's going to go away. I have been treated twice with chemotherapy, and when I had my first chemotherapy treatment, my husband was so worried about the nauseousness, and I already weighed 100 pounds, and what was I going to get down to? And he asked around at work and found some cannabis to bring home to me, and it with my first puff of cannabis took away the nauseousness, give me be able to eat, and I was in remission for 3 years. But this cancer always comes back. It came back this last August. I went through 6 more months of treatment, and this treatment just really kicked my butt. Made me sick for weeks on end, and the blueness is probably the worst part of the treatment. Wondering if this was the beginning of the end, and what was my life gonna be like. And if it wasn't for cannabis, I don't know how I would have gotten through it.
Thank you so much.
And I just really hope that you see that people like me need to have quality in the time that we have left.
Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank
you. Amanda Martinez.
Me.
Please state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
My name is Amanda Martinez. I am for the bill, and I am representing myself, Mama, as well as my son Christopher.
Okay. Go ahead.
So first,
just talk from your heart. That's not.
Oh yeah, no. So the testimony that's actually written is going to be completely different from what I'm actually going to give you guys. So, so this picture right here that you guys are going to get here in just a minute, there's 13 pharmaceutical prescriptions that my son is supposed to take, minus 3 that are not pictured. There's 13. He's supposed to take 16 total. So there's 13 in this picture. This one bottle that is in black and white, which I will gladly email you guys, an actual color picture. This one bottle eliminates those 13 pharmaceuticals. And this bottle is actually illegal in the state of Texas right now. I have to treat my child illegally. Because of this, in 2017, on May 9th, I did a news segment and vaguely came out saying that I was treating my son illegally. Not even 24 hours later, on May 10th, 2017, I had Drug Task Force at my door saying that I had a grow operation in my backyard, and they searched my home, they tore my home up, and it was a horrible day. Let me tell you. They didn't find anything. Fortunate enough for me, because I'm a criminal justice major, I would have immediately lost everything that I was going to school for. And it would have sucked, because that was $30,000 that I had put towards my degree. Currently, I cannot work in the Texas criminal justice system, period, because it's a moral and ethical dilemma between myself. Also, because of this raid, it included CPS. This was not the first time CPS came. CPSs came multiple times. They come every 6 months. They get random phone calls. Majority of them are, I believe, from previous CPS workers that we had that are no longer, willing to understand our situation. I do believe that we need doctors that we can go to and talk to openly and not fear CPS, because doctors currently right now are people that have to call CPS if they believe that there's suspected abuse, neglect, or drugs given to our children.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez.
Mm-hmm.
And again, forgive me if I mispronounced your name originally, but it probably wasn't your fault. It was misspelled.
What was it?
Well, we have a T missing.
Oh.
That's okay.
I was like, what?
All right. Next panelist, Debbie Branch.
Yes, hello.
Please state your full name, your position on the bill, and who you represent.
Yes, my name is Debbie Branch, and I'm here in support of House Bill 1365. I represent Mama, myself, and my son Scott. He's 27 years old. He has severe aggressive autism. His aggression was so out of control that he would bite, severely pinch, leaving me and others bruised and beaten. And he didn't want to do this, and we certainly didn't want to be on the receiving end of it either. Unless you've experienced it, you can't imagine how terrifying it is to be physically assaulted in this way. You can't, how exhausting it is to be attacked over and over again, over years, and how dejecting it is when it's your own child. Scott was removed from the public school system at the end of 6th grade because of his severe aggression. In Clear Creek ISD, which is a large ISD, they only send a handful of kids away. He went to a behavioral school in Houston. At age 8, his doctors put him on antipsychotic medication, Risperidol. It had a very detrimental side effect for Scott. He started the medication and in 2 months gained 22 pounds. And at the age of 18, after 9 years on this medication, he weighed 335 pounds. This medication has ruined his life. He can't walk for any great length of time. He tires easily and gets overheated. And I heard about cannabis for autism in 2009, and I went to the black market to buy the product. And 20 minutes after eating his first cannabis-infused brownie, our son completely changed. We could literally see the tension and the anxiety melt away from him. Scott became happy and non-aggressive throughout the day. So 9 years later, we're still seeing amazing behavioral results. And I just want to add that I had the opportunity to speak to Governor Abbott 3 times last year. During our first conversation, I shared with him that I utilize full plant cannabis with THC for my son. Governor Abbott thanked me for being a good mother, and he said what I could take away from our conversation was that he was not saying no to this. And I hope you will do the same. I'm a good person. I'm from an amazing family, and I know I saved my son's life by giving him this medication, and we deserve to have safe and legal access.
Thank you. Thank you for your
Thanks.
testimony.
Thank you.
Any questions for this panel?
Just real quick. Mr. Martin, what do you do for a living?
Me?
Yes, sir.
It's Fowler.
Fowler, excuse me.
I'm a rancher.
You're a rancher?
Yeah.
And what part of the state do you live in?
I live in Madison County, Texas. It's about halfway between Houston and Dallas off 45. We live close to a town called Midway, actually.
And you seem like a man who exhausted every possible option.
We did.
Not a
did.
man who went, who
We've seen,
would want to break the law.
No, and we've seen probably 15 doctors, mostly specialists. We still see doctors, even though her symptoms are almost totally gone now. We still take her to the doctor regular, and we've done blood work. And from like 18 months ago, when she was on 11 pills a day. I'm not going to name them all, but her liver function numbers on her blood work were pretty off. And now she's on no pharmaceuticals, and her blood tests are perfect. She has all of her facilities back. It's not a cure. It lasts about 8 hours. We use a 1-to-1 ratio. I know y'all probably heard that a lot today. And also we use sometimes just a high CBD because she has a lot of pain with a lot of her neck snaps and stuff, which she doesn't have anymore. But she does if you don't give her the oil. She uses the oil drops.
So for your family, this was a miracle.
This totally changed our family completely because she had to go to school on a webcam. She didn't go to school, so one of us always had to be with her at all times because, like I said earlier, she got to where she couldn't feed herself even because she couldn't control her arms, and her head tilted to one side and then shook just like 20 hours a day.
Thank you. And Ms. Martinez, what's the latest with CPS?
So CPS is currently involved. We do have CPS that is working with us to try and figure something out. They don't want to remove my child. Oh. Sorry. So CPS doesn't want to remove my child. I don't know if you guys know anything about children who have autism and the aggressive behaviors that they have. So with my son, he's 8 years old. He's very violent without his oil. And that's some of these prescriptions is supposed to help with his aggressive behavior. They don't. And so with CPS, they don't want to put him in the system primarily for the biggest reason it puts risk on the caretakers and other individuals that would take my child in. Also, there's not very many families that are willing to take a child in with these kind of behaviors. We are left, 90% of the time we're left with a state agency, such as like a state school, if you will. I'm trying to think where the one is that my son would go to. I can't remember off the top of my head, but they don't want to put him there. Thank goodness. Yeah. It's a scary place, and so, but until they can figure out something to close our case, we're gonna have one open, and they will be investigating us. They will be at my house every single week, and that's not fun, and especially for kids, because I have four kids total, and CPS has to go to the school, and that's traumatizing and very just embarrassing for my older children to have CPS coming into the school and pulling them out of class, like, oh, what'd your mom do? There's countless of things, so it sucks.
Yeah.
Members, anybody else?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought
you have a question.
Yeah, it's very concerning. If you would get me your information afterward, I'd just like to follow up on the CPS side of things. I do a lot of work in there, and really they either need to have findings or not. And I need to go through your state rep though, but.
Yes, sir.
If you can remember my name and
find other things to do other than that.
That was a very modest way of saying he is the man in this body when it comes to CPS.
Thank you. Seriously, I really do appreciate it because it's not fun. Every 6 months they're there for something new. And, my son is aggressive and he self-injures, but you know, what we're doing to help him isn't wrong. Like, I'm not a criminal. I'm helping my kid.
Just if I could say something real quick for the record, we live in a small town where everyone kind of knows everyone, and it's kind of been something we've had to keep a secret, kind of just for that same reason. And people ask us all the time, you know, how did Stacy get so much better? And we just have to tell her, well, we finally got on the right medicine.
Sir, could you state your name again for the...
Oh, I'm sorry, it's Gregory Fowler.
Thank you. All right, thank you so much, folks.
Thank y'all.
At this time, Chair calls Christiana Voorhees and Robin Garza. We'll have a larger panel for the next group. But for this one, we'd like to go forward with you all. Start left to right, my left to your right.
Okay.
Very good. Please state your name for the record, your position on the bill, and who you represent.
Okay, my name is Robin Garza. I am for the bill, and I'm representing myself and my family.
Very good. Go ahead.
Okay. My son, I'm a mother of seven, proud mother of seven, and one of my children has a debilitating disorder. He was diagnosed at 4 months of age. He is currently 13 years old now, and it's really hard to sum up what feels like an entire life story in just 2 minutes. But what I want to say is that 5 years ago, I had to make the hardest decision I think a mother should ever have to make, and that is to place my son in a residential facility at one of the state-supported living centers because he has severe autism, and his self-injurious behavior and aggressive behavior became to so much that we had no quality of life, and he needed 24-hour care. He was at Brenham State Supported Living Center and the youngest resident for about 2 years. I fought very hard to get him out of that facility. He became emaciated and ended up with a feeding tube, had lost a lot of weight, and there were multiple allegations of abuse and neglect. So 2 years ago, we got him moved out into the community into a group home setting. And in July of this year, I'm like one of the other moms who made a comment about she never thought she would be so thankful that she had a diagnosis for her child of epilepsy. And Logan has a diagnosis of epilepsy. Most of his seizures are controlled. We don't use the CBD oil for his epilepsy. We use it for his severe autism and his self-injurious behavior. And it was a relief when our neurologist agreed to send us with compassionate cultivations because he was so isolated at school and in a classroom totally by himself, and we were back to the point of looking at reinstitutionalization for him. So we started him in July and hit many roadblocks with caregivers and the providers not wanting to administer the CBD oil. So I was going to the group home twice a day, and immediately we saw such huge dramatic changes in my son that we knew that the best thing for him was to bring him back home. And so he has a quality of life. We all have a quality of life that I can't describe to anybody and make them understand where we're at, but he is a 13-year-old boy who's been trapped in his body for 13 years. Cognitively, he's about a 12-month to 18-month-old level. While I've been here today, his teacher sent me a video and he caught a ball for the first time today. So milestones that many people take for granted, we are just now seeing his brain function in a way and him being able to process and do things that he's never been able to do before. I don't want to become a refugee, medical refugee, and move to another state, but we are those parents that we will do absolutely anything that we have to do to continue down this path so that he never has to go back to an institution.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Please state your name for the record, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
I'm Christiana Voorhees, and I represent myself and my daughter, Zoe Grace, and she's also going to talk to you.
And are you testifying for the bill?
I am testifying in favor of House Bill 1365.
Very good.
I am sure that you will hear people say it's a gateway drug and you shouldn't have this, but I'm going to tell you that they are right. It is. It's a gateway to see who Zoe Grace is, because without the complete THC and the whole plant, we wouldn't know who she is. This 9-year-old little girl can read, and she is part of school. She is registered. She's BIVINS. I promise. Without it, we wouldn't know who she is, and she wouldn't be able to do the things that she can do. Yesterday, she was on the House floor. She got to be an honorary page, and she did a great job. And we're doing things that we never thought we'd be able to do. They told us she'd never be able to ride a bike. They said she'd never be able to read, because with autism, a traumatic brain injury, and this kid's had more surgeries than I can count. And we used to have 46 medications. We are down to about 8. We've weaned off of 7 blacklisted, black label pharmaceuticals for seizure medications, and haven't had a seizure in 6 months. And we sleep through the night.
Thank you so much for your testimony. And young lady, it was great seeing you on the floor. Thank you so much.
Do you want to tell them? Right. You have to tell them your name. You have to say what your name is.
Members, y'all have any questions?
Do you want to talk to them? Tell them what you like about your oils? You've practiced back there this whole time.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Folks, please. All right. Again, we ask that instead of giving us written testimony, that you please, we want to hear from you. If you have written testimony, give it to the clerk. She'll make copies for us. We can read that. We need to hear from you. And with that, I'd like to call the next panel. Which one? Okay, Debbie Tolani. And Amy Lou Falwell. You're just gonna do 2? Yeah, we'd also like to have Dr. Elias Jackson, PhD, and Dr. Charles Beal. One more time, Dr. Elias Jackson.
He's not here. He's not here.
Okay. I understand. I just wanted to make sure. All right, we'll start to our left, to your right. Please state your name for the record, your position on the bill, and who you represent.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Charles Bell, Senior Scientist at Analab Corporation in Kilgore, Texas, and I'm testifying on behalf of Analab Corporation and myself in support of House Bill 1365. Thank you for letting me testify today. Analab is a full-service lab with a 50-year-plus history in the piney woods of East Texas. We're a fully certified analytical laboratory for testing throughout the state of Texas, and throughout the nation as well, from coast to coast. We're in support of the bill as it relates to third-party testing, whether that's over-the-counter purchases, whether it's recommended, or whether it's prescribed by a doctor. And we believe that third-party testing eliminates any potential for conflicts of interest, putting profits over the patients and over the product quality. In addition, Consumer Reports just today published an article on CBD being here, and had a nationwide survey of near 1,000 people that indicated that people had been helped and in support of that. The other thing we'd like to have see is labeling, and that's part of the bill, where the patient or the caregiver is clearly informed of what the material is, what things aren't in it, contaminations, pesticides, metals, the whole gambit of things. We worked extensively with Dr. Lucio's office to try to get those things in there, and
I just got a promotion to doctor. I appreciate that.
Oh, sorry.
It's official.
There you
now.
go. There you go. Conferred today. I wanted to address one thing that a question that came up earlier. Why is there not a lot of publications and a lot of work on it? It's really simple. It's about money. And if you look at your testimony list, you won't see one large pharmaceutical company on there.
Yeah, that's right.
Why is that? Because it's a natural product.
They can't patent it.
You can't put a patent on it. If it already exists, you can sell it, but you can't put a patent on it and keep other people from using it.
Thank you, Doctor, very much. We'll go on to the next witness, and then there'll be some questions. Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am. Please state your name, your position on the bill, and who you represent.
My name is Amy Lou Faywell. I'm for 1365, and I represent myself, my son, and the organization MAMA, which is Mothers Advocating Medical Marijuana for Autism, which I co-founded 5 years ago. I've been an autism mom for 19 years, and from what I can see, the big problem with autism is when it's behavioral. The behavioral management takes two tracks. It takes therapy, which is very expensive. It breaks families. It's going to break our school system. It's going to break our society. It costs a small fortune for families and schools. My son, due to his behaviors, since third grade, had his own teacher, his own aide, his own bus, his own classroom. He had non-ed funds over the summer. It was clearly over $100,000 a year for my son to go to school. Now that he's in a residential facility due to very severe behaviors where he was basically beating up my husband and myself. He's strong, a young man, we're middle-aged. He's in a facility that is certainly over $150,000 a year on the school budget. We can't afford autism. Texas can't afford autism at this rate. The second track to help this behavior management is medicine, psychotropic drugs. They give them to our kids at a young age and in untested combinations and for long periods of times. Therefore, and autism isn't a psychotic disease. It's a developmental disorder. Autism, the drugs are making our kids worse. The side effects of drugs include diabetes, brain shrinkage, tardive dyskinesia, and diabetes. Sorry, I said that. I meant to say sudden cardiac arrest. And I want to say one thing as a quote: the main predictor of an epileptic event is being autistic and being prescribed antipsychotics. These are very serious consequences. I want to give you a little science because you had asked about it earlier, and if you don't understand, you can ask me afterwards. But there's a documented endocannabinoid deficiency in autism. Studies out of Stanford University and Israel measure blood plasma levels comparing autistic kids to neurotypical kids, and you can identify an autistic kid because their blood levels of anandamide and other endocannabinoids are lower level. That's a blood marker for autism. That's brand new for our whole community. What does a doctor do when you have low vitamin D? You get supplementation with vitamin D. Our children are deficient in anandamide, which is THC. They would benefit from supplementing with cannabis, and that's why they do so well on cannabis. The last thing I want to say, if doctors can prescribe antipsychotics, why can't they prescribe cannabis? Cannabis helps behaviors in autism, and doctors need a safe alternative to antipsychotics. This is the bill that will help the most people in Texas, including our kids with autism, including our vets with PTSD, including our patients with cancer, including so many people. Thank God for Representative Lucio. We're so thankful. This has to pass and go on. I ask you all to co-sign, support this bill, vote it out. Let's get it done.
Thank you very much.
Amen.
No, I'm okay.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Please state your full name, your position on the bill, who you represent.
Yes, my name is Debbie Tullaney. I'm here representing myself, my beautiful nonverbal 15-year-old son in this picture, and Mothers Advocating Medical Marijuana for Autism. I am for 1365. I wanted to tell you a little bit about my son's diagnoses. I know you have that paper in front of me and it's in the packet, but I want you to look at those pictures as I'm talking to you. He has a multitude of disabilities, including severe nonverbal autism, intractable epilepsy, a rare calcium disorder that has created calcification in his brain that is equivalent to what you would see in an advanced Alzheimer's patient, which means that as a 15-year-old he has dementia-like symptoms. He also has chronic kidney disease. I was the first person to purchase CBD oil February of 2018 at Compassionate Cultivation. I was first in line. I was very enthusiastic about the prospects of it for my son. And while we did see a reduction in the number of seizures that he had and the duration of his seizures, it hasn't completely helped him. We were not able to wean his prescribed antiepileptic drug at all, and we also had to have a neurosurgeon implant a vagus nerve stimulator last December. None of those things have helped. On top of that, his moods have worsened due to his autism and the severe pain that he likely experiences from his conditions. My family has suffered greatly through all of this. He is extremely aggressive and self-injurious at times, and this is a child who was extraordinarily mild-mannered and gentle. We don't really go anywhere other than to take him to school or to be in our home. The pictures that are in that pardon me, that testimony in front of you where you see him smiling in this photo right here, were taken at his Make-A-Wish trip that we were fortunate enough to be able to go on last November to meet his beloved Dallas Cowboys. And his aggression had gotten so intense leading up to that. My husband and I were really worried about how we would make it through that trip. Our younger son, who was so excited about it, was also very worried. When we got there to the hotel in Dallas, he had a terrible aggressive episode. He kicked me so hard I thought that my nose was broken. He ripped my husband's clothing. He scratched us all till we were bleeding, and he ended up in a 2-minute seizure. So the next day, when our adventure started, we used a medicine that is not purchasable here in the state of Texas, and we had the most beautiful 3 days of our family's life.
Thank you so much. Members, do you have any questions? Representative Lucio?
I just want to thank you for founding Mama. I don't think I'd be here today if it wasn't for your organization, and look how much we've come. So thank you.
Very good. Any further questions? Any questions? Thank you so much. Your testimony is very important. And again, I apologize if we seem rushed, but we still got a long night, a lot of more witnesses to hear from. I call the next panel. Jason Walker, David Bass, Piper Lending, and Keith Crook. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Thank you. I know several of you have testified already, so you kind of know the procedure. But sir, if you would tell us who you are, who you represent, and whether you're testifying on for or against the bill.
I'm Jason Walker. I represent myself, and I support 1365.
Thank you. Yeah, please share with us your testimony.
All right, I gotta keep this in front of me, kind of keep focused. I'm not gonna read from it, but I'm a retired Sergeant First Class from the Army. I served multiple combat deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan from 97 to 2017, whenever I was medically retired from being diagnosed with severe PTSD. I'm 100% disabled. I use cannabis as my only medication. I've been hospitalized 3 times while I was on active duty. I was given multiple medications. In May of 2017, whenever I was medically retired, I got a job in Odessa, and my first visit to the VA, the doctor went and prescribed me my Lunesta, which was my sleep aid, and he totally just took it away from me. He had that much power in my life to take that one thing that was kind of keeping me held together. I had no support system there. My family was in clean. I just got out the military. Shortly after that, I wanted to kill myself. I'd never been suicidal in my life. I was on 10 different medications at that time. Somebody I was talking to, texting with, called the Midland PD, because that's where I lived, and they sent some combat vets over there, and they talked me down out of my plan. Shortly after that, I came back to Killeen, Texas. I didn't say anything to my wife. What had happened? Where are my kids? I just told her I couldn't deal with the PTSD. One of my vet friends gave me some cannabis because I was telling him about what had happened. I tried it. It was a game changer for me. I was able to sleep, and then after that, my nightmares started going away. And that was something that I suffered from, debilitating nightmares, because I was on an A. Leonard team in 2007 in Baghdad. And we're almost there daily, taking people, limbless people, out of vehicles and things like that. Man, the veteran community didn't fail me, and neither did the cannabis community. The VA failed me. And if some of you are doctors, you understand if you're going to take something away from somebody that was prescribed in 2015 like that, there's going to be some really big ramifications from it. And it didn't seem like that was anybody's concern. But
Mr. Walker, I'm sorry to cut you off. And I greatly appreciate your service, and I'm glad to hear that you're doing better. And
can I just say this? That
yeah, please do.
I do not take any pharmaceutical medications anymore. I use cannabis, and I took my last benzodiazepine in 2017. And whenever I noticed from the nightmares that it was helping, that's whenever I weaned myself off the other medications. And there's other Texan vets that want that choice, and our quality of life. All right, that's what we want back. And if we had that choice, just like the guy on Tuesday took his life in the VA. All right, what if he had that choice? That's all I'm asking.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Walker. Thanks for sharing your story. Major Bass, if you would please tell us who you are, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
David Bass. I represent Texas Veterans for Medical Marijuana. I'm testifying in favor of the bill, and I'm also testifying for myself.
Great, thank you.
I founded Texas Veterans for Medical Marijuana in 2014. We had our first conference at the George Washington Carver Center here in Austin. I didn't know if anybody would show up. 85 veterans walked in the door. I didn't know who they were. I did a roll call. I started with Afghanistan and Iraq. A large group of young veterans stood up. I worked my way back, Grenada, Panama, Desert Storm, more vets stood up. Got to Vietnam, a large number of older veterans stood up. And then I asked if we had any Korean War veterans, and 2 veterans stood up of the Korean War. Everybody in that room in 2014 was using cannabis as medicine. And the 2 gentlemen that were Korean War veterans had been growing their own medicine, cannabis, here in Texas since the 1960s, and using it for PTSD and chronic pain. And so what I learned at that conference is that veterans in Texas have been passing this knowledge from generation to generation of veterans to save ourselves from these pills. And so we've collected, the veterans have been giving us pill bottles, one of their pill bottles, and they've been putting messages in the pill bottles, and these messages are to you. And this is one of our latest ones that we received just the other day from Gabe. He served in the Army for 22 years, 97 to 2019, and served in Iraq and Afghanistan. And his message is, pass this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Major Bass. And again, thank you for your service to our country as well. Ms. Lindeen, if you'll, you know the drill.
One more time, yes. Piper Lindeen from Sugar Land, Texas. for this bill, representing myself and my family. And this is the last time you'll hear from me today. I am registered for the next bill also, but I'm not going to stay for that. So this morning we heard a few times that there's an easy path with this bill and a difficult path. And I want to tell you that I'm a working mom. I have a physical job. I'm a dental hygienist, and I take care of my special needs son. I have another son, my husband. I also do a lot of other things, but I come to the Capitol, make time to come to the Capitol from Houston, walk the Capitol, visit offices, come here to testify, have been for the last several sessions, and that's not easy. And so the things that I expect from myself, and I know that other mothers expect from themselves here, we expect from our legislators also not to do those things that are easy, but to do the things that are right. And so I'm going to end with that today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lundeen, and I hope you have a safe trip home.
Thank you.
Thank you for spending so much time with us today.
Thank you for being with us.
And Mr. Crook, I know you've testified before. You know the drill as well.
Absolutely. My name is Keith Crook. I'm testifying for myself in favor of House Bill 1365. You've heard a lot of probably in the media, families torn apart by drugs and the war on drugs, and it's true because we're aware that the penalties seem to really outweigh the offense. But I'd like to tell you about a family that got saved by cannabis, and that would be my family. Again, I told you my doctor was brave enough to recommend I try it, but then I had to do something else. I had to talk to my wife, and my very, very Christian wife, and we had to get down on our knees and pray. And I prayed and decided that from that point on, I would be a criminal until my legislature made a change. I sit before you a criminal, sir. I've consumed cannabis within the last, well, it's been not too long. But what did my family get? My daughter got a father back, and when you have PTSD, your family has PTSD, promise you. My daughter got a father back. I am now able to listen and use the compassion that I so wanted as a parent instead of just scream and shut her out. That was really important because my daughter also suffered the loss of her mother at the age of 5. I'd like to say one more thing, addressing an earlier question, I think Representative Lucio, and asked about limitations on THC content in cannabis. In all practicality, whatever limitation you would set in a legalization bill, you would simply perpetuate a black market. Just logic.
Thank you, Major Crook. Members, any questions for this panel? Thank you all. We appreciate you. And thank you for your service as well. Major
Thank you,
Crook.
sir.
Thank you. Okay. The chair now calls Christopher Grisolia, Jacqueline Finkel, Ramona Harding, and Sean Meredith. Christopher Grisolia, Jacqueline Finkel, Ramona Harding, and Sean Meredith. And for those of you coming up, we will, of course, take you up in order and ask you to identify yourself, tell us who you represent, and whether you're testifying on, for, or against the bill. Sir, we'll start with you.
My name is Sean Meredith. I'm here representing myself, and I'm testifying for House Bill 1365.
Thank you.
I won't take up much of your time. Cannabis is a safe, effective medicine, and Texans should be allowed access to it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Meredith. Sir, please identify yourself on, for, or against the bill and who you represent.
My name is Chris Grisolia. I support House Bill 1365, and I represent myself. The handouts you're receiving are just a very small window into my research on this subject. I'd also like to add that I support and represent every Texas parent who still has the chance to save their child. Dr. William O'Shaughnessy was treating epilepsy successfully in the United States, among other things, in 1850. 169 years ago, we knew. 120 years before cannabis was deemed to have zero medicinal value, we knew. 166 years before my son died from the sudden unexpected death in epilepsy, we knew. Years of medications did not help him. In fact, every medication change only made his condition worse. We had heard of people using cannabis, but by this time he was a 23-year-old man who refused to break the law. So we lost him. He wouldn't have qualified for teacup even though he passed before it went into effect. Because of the limitations on THC, his condition would have required high doses of THC to control. I've personally spent well over 3,000 hours researching cannabis since he passed. I've personally read, I stopped counting at over 5,000 medical and scientific studies that I've read from all over the world, hundreds of clinical trials, and thousands of people that I've met. It's time that Texas catches up to what I believe is now 34 states that have a comprehensive medical cannabis program that includes all conditions that will benefit and includes full plant spectrum availability, one that leaves the decisions of how and what part of the plant we use up to doctors and their patients. And one final point that I have to point out is that if what we fear is that medical cannabis will fall into the hands of someone who's unauthorized and be abused, maybe the question we should be asking is maybe we need to outlaw all medications, because the same could be said for everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gasolia. Thank you. And ma'am, we'll move on.
Hi, my name is Jax Finkel. I'm here on behalf of Texas Normal, and I'm in support of the bill. I'll be very brief. I want to first thank...
Ms. Finkel, I think you also registered for yourself, too. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm here for myself, too. I also believe in medical cannabis.
Please proceed.
I would like to first thank Chairwoman Thompson for making sure that we could have such an important committee on this matter. And I would like to thank Chairman Guerra as well for making sure that this would move smoothly, and for Representative Lucio for his very thoughtful bill and laying it out. In the desire to make sure that this was very conscious of your time, we worked with the chairman's office to make sure that we could collect testimony in written form for you, so that we could make sure that patients that can't make it to the Capitol, professionals who are not able to be here, could be heard. And in this binder, you will find over 100 testimonies, and it is my honor to give them to you.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Great way to handle that. We appreciate that very much. Very much. Ma'am, we'll move to you, Ms. Harding.
Yes, sir. My name is Romana Harding. I am speaking on behalf of, in support of the bill, for myself and as a co-founder of Texas Veterans for Medical Marijuana. Major Bass talked about the pills we collected. A picture is worth 1,000 words, as they say. This is a coffin that Texas veterans have filled with those pill bottles to letters. I'll give like a second just so you can see the impact of this.
That jumped right out when it was passed out.
Yeah, oh, well, that's one reason I put it there.
Right.
As a veteran, I'm different from my comrades here. This is very emotional. I'm a survivor of military sexual trauma. I was first beaten at 17 and raped by an Iranian pilot in our training so badly that I could not have children. I was given a direct order that evening that I could not tell anyone, including my own mother. And over the decades, she would ask me why I couldn't. My uncle watched me line up punch cups of Jack Daniels and drink them like shots. And he was a sailor veteran. He asked me, "What happened, niece?" I said, "You don't have a clearance high enough for me to tell you." He said, "Well, I want you to switch from alcohol to cannabis." And I said, "Why should I switch from a legal drug to something illegal?" And he said, "A fact. Your brother died last week from an alcohol overdose." Since then, I switched to medical cannabis. I want you to know that my VA doctor sent me here and asked me to ask you to support us. She feels that She watches too many veterans die from overdoses. And one thing I haven't heard mentioned much here tonight is the toxicity from those pills. Every 3 months, she had to test me for pills. I was sent to Texas from a medical state. My doctor in the medical state, my VA doctor, had it as botanical in my file. And she suggested that I do home grow because having lost so much as a military sexual trauma survivor, it would give me back control. Like the other veterans, for me, THC needs to be between 20 and 30%. And it's the only thing that helps. Like my fellow veterans, I have gone off all pharmaceuticals. I use a little ibuprofen once in a while, but that's it. This is also my 3rd session testifying, and we're going to keep coming back. We're all going to keep coming.
Thank
you so much, Representative Lucio, for helping us.
Thank you, Ms. Harding. Thank you for your service, and God bless.
Yeah.
Amen. Yeah. Thank you. Representative Garrett, would you like to, Chair Garrett, would you like to regain the gavel here? Oh, members, any questions for this panel?
Thank you for your testimony.
All right. Thank you. Thank you all. God bless.
Oh, I wanted to mention real quick, there were 2 veterans who could not be here tonight, so their information, including Arthur Mayer, who was a Vietnam veteran and left our state, and he wants to come home to his grandchildren and his family, and he asks that you please allow him to do that. Thank you. That's for you, Art.
Thank you, Ms. Harding. Thank you.
Representative Lucio.
I just wanted to mention I have a constituent who submitted written testimony along with the panel, Russell Rusterberg, and I know his family very well, and I just want to thank him for participating in today's proceedings.
Members, anything else? Okay. Next panel, Robert Head, Cindy Hoffman, Nina Brodsky, and Karen Reeds will be the next panel. And again, as everybody's sitting down, we ask that if you have anything, written testimony, please give it to the clerk. She'll make a copy and provide it to us. We'd rather you speak from the heart. It's more effective that way. We can always read your testimony. And again, I want to emphasize, please don't read your testimony. Just talk to us, please. Okay? All right. From left to right.
My name
right.
My name is Karen Reeves. I'm here to testify in support of HB 1365. I represent myself in the Syntax Community Outreach. I did mention earlier I was a cannabis patient. At 30 years old, I realized cannabis was medicine. But I filed for disability when I was 40 years old, and by 2004, I suffered a mini stroke and my first massive heart attack. That's when I became on a fixed income and was without regular access. I was also misdiagnosed at that time as being bipolar. I was put on a variety of pharmaceuticals to treat those illnesses, only to find out a few years later that I'd been suffering also from sleep apnea, that I really could have benefited from some cannabis. Now, sleep apnea and heart disease are 2 hidden illnesses that are a deadly combination when left untreated. I considered myself lucky to be alive at that point. However, during the years that followed, as a result of taking pharmaceuticals my body did not need, I developed diverticulitis, colitis, and onset Crohn's disease. I finally got so sick that I suffered my second massive heart attack in 2009, only to recover to find out I had broken my back again. So that was the second time I had a back fracture. In 2010, actually was my 3rd surgery. I'd been suffering for so long on pharmaceuticals that I finally realized through the fog that my children were now grown and that my life had passed me by. I was 50 years old.
Ma'am, could you do me a favor? Back up from the mic just a little bit.
Okay. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
So when I turned 50 years old, I had to make a decision. Did I want to live or did I want to die? All of my life, I had suffered from chronic depression, pain, and anxiety. And for the first time in my life, I decided I wanted to live. And my first step at that point was to stop taking all the pharmaceuticals. And in 2012, I started to educate myself and others about the benefits of cannabis. And you are hearing today about patients all across Texas that are currently medicating illegally with cannabis, and their stories with medicating as medicine it's amazing. But after I've tested, this is my third time. After 2015, the stress of that year got to me, and I had my third massive heart attack. And I did have in 2016, I had an open heart surgery, and I survived that. And then last year I fell off a ladder. But I'm still here today to tell you that cannabis is helping me to live a better quality of life. Cannabis allows you to see me for who I am, not for what my medical chart says. And I appreciate you hearing my testimony today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. God, what a relief.
All right. Please state your full name, your position on the bill, and who you represent, sir.
Yes, my name is Robert Head. I support and I'm for HB 1365. I am speaking for myself and Texas Veterans for Medical Marijuana. I'm a sixth-generation Texan, been in this place for a long time. My family's been around for quite some time, and I want to raise my children here. I'm also a businessman. I have a medical marijuana farm up in Maine, and my partner and I both served in the war, and we knew that this is one of the best things for veterans. And we produce it up there, and we sell it up there, and we have great results with our patients up there. A lot of vets. Most people are over 40. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. So I'm a big family man, just like a lot of you guys are. And when I came home from the war, I hit the ground running. Got married, had kids, went to A&M, finished up my degree. I was on hard charging. But there's an issue. The longer I was out, I noticed I started drinking more. And I needed the pain pills because my knees were hurting, my back was hurting, I couldn't sleep. And those pain pills, like the doctor said earlier, over time gradually increased. And my drinking increased. I was up to 10 pain pills a day, a fifth of whiskey a week, and a 12-pack of beer minimum. This was a standard operating procedure for me. But what was happening was I was not there for my children. I was yelling at them. I was getting mad at them. I was getting mad at my wife. I was not the man I wanted to be. And in my mind, I could see the person that I wanted to be. And there's a lot of vets that are like this. They can see the person they want to be, but because of the alcoholism, because of the pain pills that they're taking, it increases and it keeps them from being able to break that emotional wall down. And a lot of us come back with this emotional wall. We're supposed to have this emotional wall up. We're in the time of war. We don't have time to deal with emotion. Breaking that down is not as easy as you think it is. But for some reason, cannabis did that for me. It broke this invisible wall down. I became a much better father. I became a much better husband. And you know something? I started thinking to myself, like, if more veterans had an ability to be the father they wanted to be, if they had an ability to be the husband they wanted to be, or the wife that they wanted to be, they can raise much better children. And maybe these children won't be voting for people to go into war. Maybe these children will say, hey, there's a better way of doing this. We can think through this. We don't knee-jerk reaction, get mad like my father did. We have an opportunity to change lives, a great opportunity to change lives. And I'm sitting here looking at a panel of men and women who can do this for us. I really appreciate you putting this bill together, because this is going to help out a lot of people. Veterans want to help out everybody. That's what we did. We went to serve, not to come back to reap the rewards for ourselves, but to go serve and reap the rewards for everybody. A community of people that are coming together to say, hey, we need to legalize this plant so we can help as many people out here. So that's what I'm here for.
Thank you so much. And again, thank you for your service to our country.
Thank you.
And you're representing, were you testifying for yourself or also on your business?
For myself, not for my business. For myself and for Texas Veterans for Medical Marijuana.
Thank you very much. All right. Please state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
My name is Cindy Hoffman. I represent me, and I am 150,000% for the bill. I have a graduate degree in Health Services Administration. I'm a fellow in the American College of Medical Practice Executives. My background is as an executive director is in orthopedic spine and neurosurgery. I can't tell you the problems we have seen and my physicians have seen with opioids. All of you know that. But much, much more than that, I am blown away by the misery and suffering I've seen here tonight from parents of autistic children, and it just makes me want to scream about the control that Big Pharma has over medicine in this country. I am sick and tired of it. We have to change that. People need, my background is in pain and pain management as well. We have to have new medications, new therapies for pain management in this country. We have to have it. We all know the opioid issue. What we may not all know is that acetaminophen, the ingredient in Tylenol, causes at least 1/2 of the liver failures in this country and many, many, many of the ER visits in this country. We have to have new methods of pain management. I think your idea of a board is absolutely excellent. I think you have to have scientists and professionals over everything, controlling to make sure that all the processes across the entire supply chain, supply and delivery chain, are quality assured, made by standards, and somebody is watching what gets done. And I think professional scientists, professional policymakers, quality assurance professionals have to be in that mix. I would actually call it the Texas Consortium of Medical Cannabis, but you name it what you want to. We have everything we need in this great state to produce absolutely the best medical cannabis facilities in the world. We have it all right here.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
You don't want to know where the good places are? Come on.
Well,
I'm going to say the best agronomy department in the world. Just give me a minute here. We all know what that is. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Oh, there? We don't need to be doing that now.
All right.
Peaceful.
Okay,
Okay.
Please, folks. We
I
have
know.
We have a long night. We have a lot of
Okay.
witnesses to still cover.
Okay.
We want to hear from. We need to be fair to them. We're limiting testimony to 2 minutes. Members, do you have any questions for this panel? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Nina Brodsky. All right, the next panel, please. John Delaney, Lisa Seal, I'm sorry, I'm tongue twisted tonight. Charles Swell, Cambria Frommel, and Latanya Whittington. I called 5. Or did I call 4? What did I say? It's been a long night. Latanya, can you just, I'm sorry. You don't mind waiting just a minute? Okay. We're going to start from left to right. Thank you very much. And please state your name for the record, your position on the bill, and who you represent, sir.
My name is John Delaney. I'm for the bill, and I represent myself.
Okay, sir.
I'm a senior district judge for the state of Texas. I became a district court judge in January of 1984. That's around 35 or 6 years. I live in Bryan, Texas with my wife, and we've raised 4 children there and have 4 grandchildren. I'm a U.S. Navy veteran from the Vietnam era. I have sent hundreds and hundreds of people to the Texas prison system. I've revoked people's probation or not. 4 people to death row. I'm a serious guy. These days, as a retiree, I handle CPS cases. That's what I do. 3-4 days a week in 3 different counties. All I do is hear CPS cases. I think I'm very familiar with the impact of drug abuse. But we have a terrible problem in this state and many other states that has criminal laws that deny access to healing plants to so many people, as you've heard. I could tell you dozens of stories and just burn up time that's better left to other people. We know that there are 34 other states, plus the District of Columbia, plus 3 American territories, and 19 sovereign nations around this globe that have decriminalized marijuana for medical purposes. This is not a new, novel idea. It's a tested, proven idea. I don't know of one country or one state that has retreated once the decision has been made. That alone is powerful evidence, it seems to me. The nation of Canada has had medical marijuana available for its citizens for 18 years now. And here in Texas, we think it's just too risky. I wonder what makes us think that we're so much smarter than the other 34 states.
Judge, as an officer of the court, I don't ever like to tell a judge we're out of time for your first part of your presentation. But I'm sure there'll be a question for you if you don't mind.
I proudly accept the limit.
Thank you, Judge. Please state your name for the record and your position on the bill.
My name is Lisa Sewell. I am for this bill and I represent myself.
Okay.
My 57-year-old mother lives in the body of an 80-year-old due to years of opioid dependency and abuse. And my husband has also lived for 21 years with HIV. And so I've seen it firsthand how cannabis can help them. Now, my mother has legitimate pain, but it's hard for her or her doctor to determine what is real pain or her fear of pain due to the fact that she's taking fentanyl, Dilaudid, Valium, Paxil, and multiple other prescriptions a day. Now, again, she's 57 years old. My daughter will turn 10 next week. I really hope that if she was given the option of cannabis, that she'll be able to see my daughter's 11th birthday. I know you'll be hearing from my husband here shortly, but he has also struggled with HIV for 21 years, and I can tell you he's not looking for a high, he's looking for relief. Over the years, I've watched him go from 20 pills a day to 3. And so most of these people in this room are not looking for a bill based on old perceptions. Texas needs a medical expansion bill that is based on current evidence and data. 34 states have now legalized medical cannabis, and our Texas patients are being left behind. So now we want to stand up for people that can't stand up for themselves, and we don't want to wait till next legislative session before someone dies of opioid abuse or from suicide or of cancer. So thank you for your consideration.
I really thank you for your succinct, precise testimony.
You're welcome.
Very much. Yes, sir. Next witness, microphone.
Oh, yes.
Please state your full name, your position on the bill, and who you represent.
I am Charles Sewell. I am for House Bill 1365. And I represent myself and the 95,000 other Texans that are currently living with HIV and AIDS. It pains me that she's the first person to talk about this today. Yes, 20 years ago I was diagnosed with HIV. I was 145 pounds, that's 45 pounds underweight. I was miserable. I had gone through most of my 20s always sick, literally spiraling into a wasting syndrome. It took my doctor, then my own brother, to test a 20-something-year-old kid for HIV. I tested positive. The initial medications were 8 pills at a time, 3 times a day, had to be taken with food, which was an outrageous concept for me because I never ate. If I didn't eat, the pills just made me more sick. The vomiting, the diarrhea, couldn't go to work, couldn't function, just laid around, did nothing, felt like I was literally wasting away. With just a little bit of cannabis, all of that turned around. I no longer needed the pills for the nausea, the vomiting, the diarrhea. I no longer had trouble sleeping. I was able to go back to college, finish my degree, get a job I actually enjoy, marry my best friend. My quality of life, I have it back. it's completely different. I would most definitely have died a long time ago if it had not been for just a tiny bit of cannabis.
Thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank
you. Young lady, state your full name, your position on the bill, and who you represent.
Awesome. Hi, my name is Cambria Frommel. I am for the House Bill 1365, and I represent myself. When I was 12 years old, I was diagnosed with the chronic disease endometriosis, something that 1 in 10 women have to deal with every day. Endometriosis is when the endometrium, the inner lining of the uterus, actually grows outside of the uterus, which can cause scar tissue, painful cramps, heavy period flow, organ binding, and infertility, along with many other symptoms that can range from nausea to back pain to constipation. And by the time I was 15, I had had 3 surgeries and 4 procedures to try and help with my pain. But when I came out of my 3rd laparoscopic surgery last January, my specialist actually said, "My pain will never go away, but hopefully that it can be manageable." Doctors and scientists are still baffled by this disease because there is no cure and no one theory as to what actually causes it, only that it has something to do with inflammation. And unfortunately for me, along with having endometriosis, I also was only born with 1 kidney, meaning I cannot take any pain medications that most other people can. The only option I've had for pain medication is Tylenol with codeine, which obviously is not ideal in any situation. The only medication on the market right now is something called Lupron, which actually stops the ovaries' production of hormones, setting you into early menopause. And they wanted me to have early menopause at 15, which the side effects are crazy, like bone loss, memory loss, cognitive issues, sight issues, irritability, just awful stuff that I don't want to have to go through that. So I found great relief using CBD oil. I've been able to use balms and tinctures that have been able to help with my anxiety along with the pain that comes with endometriosis. And I would just really like to have a bill passed to be able to have medicine legally that can help with something that cannot be cured, and for everybody else that has chronic pain every day, that would really help.
Young lady, thank you for your testimony. Members, any questions? For the
I'd like to ask the judge, if we could, to finish his thought.
You're going to ask a judge.
I am going to ask. Other than owning Orange Theory Fitness, I am an officer of the court and a practicing lawyer, and I know to respect judges. So, Judge, if you could tell us what prompted you to be here today.
Well, first of all, let me acknowledge that I'm in your house. You're not in my house. And I think all of us in this room are appreciative of the time and energy you are devoting to our cause. What brought me here today? There are multiple things. One of them is a 38-year-old stepson. I've raised 4 children, a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, and a homeless drug addict. And sometimes he lives in the woods, sometimes he lives on the street, sometimes he lives on somebody's couch. Periodically he comes to stay in our house. He has a mental health problem that is untreatable by any drug that we've been able to find for him, but he gets enormous relief from marijuana, and he can function almost as a normal person. Sadly, along the way, the criminal justice system has taken away his driver's license for 6 months. He hadn't had a driver's license in 10 years. So it's a terrible compounded thing, partly his fault, partly an accident of nature, but the state of Texas is complicit in his misery and our misery because it makes it a crime for him to get the relief that helps him. Now, I have to make this observation. I've been sitting back listening to these people with their very compelling stories. I can see the expressions on your faces. You're very moved. So I have to wonder if you had been on the jury panel for one of the 375 cases I've impaneled a jury, would you be able to tell the judge and the prosecutor that if you were a jury on a case to try any of these people for possession of marijuana, would you be able to vote guilty? I bet you'd stand in front of that judge and say, I'm sorry, I just don't think I could. Well, if that's true, if my instinct is true, that begs the question, why do we have this outrageous law in the first place?
Thank you, Judge.
Yeah.
And young lady, you were fantastic. Thank you for being here. You're extremely articulate. We're proud to have you here.
Judges, I'd like to make this observation. As a lawyer since 1985, I have not ever heard a judge speak the truth the way you have tonight. Thank you.
Very kind. Thank you.
Thank you, folks. You gotta love it. Okay, we'll call the next panel. LaTanya Whittington, Kelly Myers, Loretta Buster, and Aaron Robinson. And again, let me remind everybody, please do not read a script. You can hand it to the clerk. She'll make a copy. We'll get a copy of it. We want to hear from you. We want to hear from your heart. And not just, and I hate to say this, not words off a piece of paper. We can read that. So, left to right. Please state your name for the record and your position on the bill and who you represent.
My name is LaTanya Whittington, and Precinct Chair 320, Harris County Democratic Party. Also the Executive Director for Cannabis Reform of Houston, and I support House Bill 1365, and I'm representing myself right now.
And excuse me, you also registered as Cannabis Reform.
Yes, I can.
Of Houston and Self.
Yes.
That's correct.
Yes, that's correct, and I can represent Cannabis Reform in Houston.
No problem. Very good. Thank you.
As I talked a little earlier about my trigeminal neuralgia, but I want to kind of go over some symptoms that I deal with. It's no cure for this diagnosis. It's a chronic pain and a debilitating pain that carries sensations to my brain. Some of the triggers are touching my face, drinking cold or hot liquids, eating, talking, encountering breeze, smiling, washing my face, putting makeup on, living my life. That's living life. But, you know, I had the brain surgery 3 years ago. They put a Teflon around the nerve, but there's no way to save a nerve. I'm going to have to go back in for another surgery with 27 stitches in my head. But what I really want to talk about today is legalizing cannabis in Texas, because I'm a candidate for it. You know, I have 99 problems, but thanks to cannabis therapy, addiction to opioids is not one. All the medicines that you guys have listed there are not opioids. Cannabis is my medicine. I did give you the pages that the doctor prescribes me. There's 10 to 15 medicines on there by Harris Health, and that's too much for any person to take. Anybody. I do not want to die in a pill bottle. I want to have quality of life. I have a 13-year-old daughter, and I have a husband who loves me dearly, and they want me to be here for them, and I want to be here for them. Texas is way behind in times. We need to stop the stinking thinking, and we need to start thinking about us, the people, instead of you using your own personal feelings. You know, our feelings, our life is what matters. The state of Texas is forcing people to move out of here. And there's so much work that can be done. I hope that every representative and senator of the state of Texas look at my case and reevaluate their position on cannabis. You know, and with being a black woman and supporting cannabis in Texas, it's very hard. If we look at this room, you'll see. But the thing is that I am going to keep standing because I want to live. I want life.
Thank you. Please state your full name, your position on the bill, and who you represent.
My name is Loretta Bester. I'm for the bill, and I represent myself. I don't want to waste too much of your time. I had written a testimony. Took a lot of time, by the way. I'm a 46-year-old domestic violence survivor, a mother of 5. I have traumatic brain injury, spinal stenosis, osteoarthritis, and PTSD due to the violence I suffered in my home. I've never broken the law. I've never been in trouble for anything. I am a criminal because I decided to stop using 23 pharmaceutical medications, 4 of them being opioids, to cure my seizures and PTSD, nervous disorders. I have nervous system damage, so I have a lot of pain and muscle spasms. I was on a lot of things like gabapentin and Valium and phenobarbital, Dilantin, like 23 of them. A lot of medications. I take one medication now. St. David's Hospital used to have me listed as a patient with a cannabis disorder. Cannabis consumption disorder, to be exact, because I had told them that I wanted to stop using the medications they had me on and start using cannabis. So they said, that's not a good idea. Sounds like drug addictive behavior. And they labeled me as such. I decided to go ahead and try the cannabis. I watched Alexis Fortel. I stand with Alexis. I watched her stop having seizures. I was having upwards of 15, 20 seizures a day. At one point, after my head injury, I actually had 87 grand mal seizures followed by 5 minutes and 45 seconds of CPR. I was in a wheelchair, incontinent. I couldn't do anything. My family was desperate. My mind was a mess. I was angry and violent. I couldn't walk. It was really bad. So my family reached out to the medical professionals. They're like, what do we do? They were going to put me in a state-funded nursing facility on a hospice. They told me not to worry. It's okay. We're going to make sure you don't have pain anymore. We're going to give you hospice. That's when I realized that all those doctors that worked so feverishly trying to save my life while I was dying from this head injury, they didn't know that the doctors in the future were only going to medicate me to death. Cannabis saved my life. I'm walking. I'm on Social Security and I have a housing voucher. But all the medications that I was on was thousands of dollars a month, paid for by you guys. So many that I could have bought a house every single month. Now I'm on a housing voucher using cannabis and I'm a criminal.
Thank you.
It doesn't seem fair.
Thank you for your testimony.
Hello.
Hi. I see you have a script there.
It's not a script.
Okay.
Just a
Please
minute.
state your name for the record, your position on the bill, and who you represent.
My name is Kelly Myers, and I am in support of House Bill 1365. I represent myself and my husband. Thank you for holding this hearing, and especially thank you to Representative Lucio for a thoughtful bill that has compassion for myself and my husband. My husband has multiple sclerosis, and I have an incurable blood cancer with a high likelihood of recurrence. And you can read all about us in the binders that I just provided you. 70% of America has access to safe, legal medical cannabis now, including every state that borders Texas. And in America, a state line
should not change the ability of a patient to access medicine. When I was diagnosed with cancer, the chemo that they recommended had only been being used in the United States for 5 years. And so it was very difficult for me to find statistically significant information that would help me make a decision about whether I wanted to receive this medication. It was hard to find statistically significant data in the United States. But this drug had been being used by Germans for 30 years. So I was able to look and see what were going to be the long-term, both the short-term side effects and the long-term effects of this medication. So see, doctors and scientists have been taking leads from each other, from countries around the world, for a very long time. And we should not ignore what's been going on around the world as it relates to cannabis research. For me, cannabis cured my nausea, and then I could eat. It reduced my awareness of pain, and then I could rest. It gave me energy, and then I could work. It calmed my brain, and then I could sleep. And it elevated my mood, and then I didn't think about dying. Compassionate means feeling or showing sympathy to others. And I can see that you have compassion for my story, and I wish that you would demonstrate your compassion for Texans by expanding the compassionate use program through House Bill 1365.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I just want to say one more thing. My name is LaTanya Whittington, and I am a perfect example of how cannabis can heal. I'm here. I'm not dead. I'm alive.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions?
One question, quick.
Representative Zedler.
So Germany has been using medical cannabis for 30 years?
No, I'm sorry. Germany's been using the chemotherapy that I received for 30 years. The U.S. has only been using it for 5 years.
I see. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions, members? Thank you so much. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Next panel. Daniel Clancy, Jose Ramon, Janet Rutledge, Jody Ladd. Okay, thank you. I had been repeating the things that we had wished, and that's not to read a script, and y'all have heard that, so we appreciate that. We've heard some of your testimony earlier. Starting on the left, our left, your right. Please state your full name for the record, your position on the bill, and who you represent.
My name is Janet Rutledge. I am in favor of the bill. I represent myself, and I also represent COCW, Cannabis Open Carry of Texas. And I'm just here to say I'm learning a lot from this, and I do appreciate all your time and efforts that you're putting into this, especially you, Representative Lucio. Cannabis is medication. I've been calling it medication since the 70s. Coming out of a family from severe manic depression, a mother who was addicted to many pills, bottles of pills, is what I grew up seeing. I also wrestle with depression, anxiety at this time. I do not take medication anymore for it. I do not take any pharmaceuticals for it. I have used cannabis for my depression and anxiety. I also have tried many forms of cannabis for my chronic pain. That's just the basics of what my testimony is. I'm just going to touch a base. Like I said, I've been calling it cannabis medication for many years. Speaking from just from my personal experience, I have a stepson who had a heart condition. He took many pharmaceuticals. He passed in 2001. He took many, he got a lot of side effects from these medications. He was unable to eat and lost a lot of weight. He had a lot of bad nausea. During this time, I had 5 teenage sons in my home, raising my kids. And they all were trying to do different drug things and, cannabis, different forms of self-medicating. We allowed my 17-year-old son to use cannabis because it allowed him to eat. It took away his nausea. It gave him a better quality of life for the next few years until he passed away from a diabetic stomach. I also have a son who is now age 33. He's living on the streets. He has a very severe form of mental illness, schizophrenia, and he has suffered a severe mental breakdown. But I have seen just recently, he used cannabis. It calmed him down. He was hearing all these voices and talking to these voices in my presence. We couldn't carry a conversation on. He used cannabis. Within minutes, we were able to sit calmly at a table and talk and eat. He couldn't carry on a normal conversation. He has a very sick mind, but he was able to be calm and have emotion with me, his mother, who I've only seen 4 times since October because he's living on the streets.
Thank you.
That's another issue. But
Thank you very much.
that's just a touching base.
Thank you. Please state your full name, your position on the bill, who you represent.
My name is Jose Ramon, and I represent Cannabis Open Carry Walks and myself, and I'm for the bill. And I'm not going to waste too much time. We've heard a lot of amazing testimonies. I mean, we've heard that cannabis is safer than Tylenol. So I just want to give you, I was arrested last year, and I'm currently about to start trial for 2 joints of cannabis, which means the state of Texas is about to waste $30,000 to $40,000 to take me to trial for 2 joints of cannabis, which is roughly 2 to 3 grams of cannabis, which is a very small amount. As I'm sure y'all can think of as members of the board, a lot better places that money could be going to. Than the effort wasted by the law enforcement to arresting me and my father on the same 2 joints of cannabis. They arrested us both. Even though I claimed that the cannabis was mine, they still arrested my father. 70-year-old man, never been to jail a day in his life. He got arrested for his son's cannabis. Even though I claimed the cannabis on scene as my own, they still arrested my father. I'm just here to ask y'all to please help us here in Texas. We're all struggling. We're all fighting this together, and we need y'all's help to do this.
Thank you, sir.
Please free the weed in Texas.
Thank you for your testimony. I think you know routine.
Yes, sir.
Please state your full name, your position on the bill, and who you represent.
My name is Jody Ladd, and I am support of the bill. And I represent Cannabis Open Carry Walks and myself, as well as many other Texans we've
I
met.
hope you're not going to read. We want to hear from you.
No, this is just bills. They're cliff notes things. One of the things is again, even though I do support this bill, I think it needs to go further. The debilitating. My standpoint is if it can help you, you should be allowed to use it. So many things you've heard, such a broad spectrum that this is helping people. One of the other things I want to talk about too is the fact that when a bill does get passed, I would like to see, not exponential licensing fees for people, which in a way monopolizes and corporatizes the cannabis and medicine. And when you get a corporate, aspect to it, and you keep it at that, when you create licensing that costs so much that the general public is unattainable to reach, it shrinks the market. Corporations don't have the greatest record of making sure that their quality, or we don't want a Monsanto GMO seed. We want small mom and pop businesses with heirloom seeds where we know they come from. We know they are organic. We know they're not being so many different types of pesticides and synthetics and things. So if we could keep the licensing low to make it attainable for people. The Texas is such a huge market. I do, thank you for putting home grow in there. The fastest growing demographic in this country for cannabis sales is senior citizens, and that's validated by many. You can go on Google and search for it. And when you're a senior citizen and you're on a fixed income and you don't make much money and you're spending all this money on medications just to have a good quality of life, if you can grow your own medicine for free in your own backyard or in a closet in your home, that money can go so much further for these people that are on fixed incomes. So if we can keep just the regulation for personal home use, where we don't have like, inspections that have to be done. We're responsible adults. Treat us like responsible adults. If we don't, like when it comes to alcohol and tobacco, we're told be responsible with it. If you don't do something responsible, and you suffer the repercussions of your actions. It seems like we get that for alcohol and tobacco, but we hear, oh, but you can get high, but you can get drunk. Oh, we can't have you smoking it because it's not healthy, but we can go out and buy cigarettes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please state your full name, position on the bill, and who you represent.
Yes, sir. My name is Daniel Clancy. I am in support of Representative Lucio's bill, House Bill 1365, and I'm testifying on behalf of myself.
Thank you.
I want to first thank this committee for allowing me a few minutes this evening to discuss this, what I consider a very important bill. I want to thank Representative Lucio for your leadership and all of your hard work. I have been involved in the criminal justice system for 27 years. I began my legal career as a trial court prosecutor out of the Dallas County District Attorney's Office in 1992. I was a prosecutor for 5 years, and in 1998 I was elected judge of one of the county criminal courts in Dallas County. 2002 I was reelected. In 2005 Governor Perry appointed me to a criminal district court bench in that year. I served as a criminal court judge in Dallas County for 8 years. January 1st of 2007, I went into private practice, and I'm in private practice today. I represent individuals who are charged criminally in both state court and federal court. What's the point? My point is, in 25, 27 years, I have seen firsthand the devastation that these opioids are causing, not just the patients, not just the individuals who are suffering, but their entire family. It goes much further than just the individual who overdoses. Obviously, that affects the entire family. The pain of the addiction is oftentimes more intense than the pain for which the opioid was originally prescribed for. I want to say briefly, I'm a Republican. I don't shy away from stating my party affiliation. I'm a Republican, and I'm proud to say that the Republican Party, as you all are very well aware, at their last convention made it a part of their plank. This is now a bipartisan issue. It's not just Democrats, it's Democrats and Republicans alike. I'm a proud Texan. I'm a very proud Texan, but I feel disappointed and very frustrated that we have lagged so far behind the rest of the country in this particular area.
Thank you for your testimony.
Yes, sir.
Members, any other questions? Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
Thank you, members of the panel.
I wonder if everybody has already spoken at least once, and I wonder if we could heard some, what?
Representative Zedler has made a suggestion, and we appreciate the testimony, but folks that have already testified once, would you all please yield to those who have not had the opportunity to testify, and just simply sign in that you support or don't support the bill or are neutral on it. Let's be fair to all the rest of the folks, please. It's getting awfully late, and I know folks are going to want to get home. Yeah, we still have 26 more folks to get through. So those of you that have testified already, please yield to those who have not. All right. Is this the next panel? Next panel. And I don't think I remember, well, there is a couple anyways. Daniel Merritt.
I was already here, but I need to testify. I came from Colorado to do this.
Okay, sir. You have a right to. I was just asking for
say my point.
a little consideration for others. Mandy Hughes. Anita Summers. Nathaniel Zerzwinski.
He's not here? Yeah. No, he's not here. Not here.
Okay. Cameron Pinkerton. Okay. Very good. Left to right, you know the routine, sir. Please give your full name for the record, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
My name is Daniel Merritt, and I represent myself and COCW, Cannabis Open Carry Walks of Texas.
Mr. Merritt, would you do us a favor and not read your script, just talk from the heart?
Okay, I want this bill, and I do want to read this because I've spent 5 months making this, and you wouldn't let me read it last time. I'm going to read my last paragraph, and that's all I'll read.
Very good, sir. Thank you.
Please, I hope you all listen closely to all of us bearing our souls in pain through our stories. Do the right thing, have compassion, and care for all of us, not for political reasons, but to save lives. We need whole plant legalization in Texas. Doctors and government, police, etc. have developed a stigma against marijuana and need to be trained on the benefits of this plant. Every part of this plant is used and can be juiced, eaten, drank, made into oil, smoked, and vaporized for full medical effect, as well as used topically for muscle pain and skin disorders. Everyone must do their research, have the freedom to study, not only for personal level, but on a medical and scientific level. Please free the weed for all in Texas. Thank you.
Sir, one more time, could you please identify yourself for the record?
My name is Daniel Merritt. I am a cannabis activist from Colorado.
And
your position on the bill?
Yeah,
I want the bill.
Yes, sir.
I'm for it.
Yeah, your position on the bill, we appreciate that. And I think we spoke earlier, COCW and self?
Yep, Cannabis Open Carry Walks of Texas and myself.
Thank you very much.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, I'm Mandy Hughes. I am for 1365, and I'm with Cannabis Open Carry and myself.
And your position on the bill?
For.
Thank you very much.
My great-grandparents came to Texas in a covered wagon, so my family roots are very, very deep. I am a mother of 15 foster kids and 3 adopted children. I have been married for 20 years. I am an upstanding citizen of Texas. Pay my taxes, do what I'm supposed to do. I took my pills like I was told to for my multiple different diagnoses. I can go to any doctor and they'll give me just about any pill I need. I want whatever you want to say it. They'll give it to me. And I'll end up in bed in pain because it destroys my body. And I can't, like so many other people say, you can't make the connections with your children that you really want to make. When you're so drugged up, you can't think. And we need this legalized. The homegrown is very important. I'm come from farmers, and there is a connection you make with a plant, and especially if you're growing a plant that's healing you. You literally make a connection to it. My mother died. I healed half of myself with being in the garden and crying. It is important that we can get our hands on that plant. One other thing with the foster parents and the drugs that we hear so much that we're afraid it's going to get to our children. A number of my foster children have been on so many drugs that they've drooled, that's straight from pharmaceuticals. Like there's no way cannabis can damage a child as bad as pharmaceutical drugs, and seeing a 5-year-old boy have drool coming out of their mouth because they're so over-medicated by damage that's happened to them when something natural could have possibly helped them.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you. You told me to speak from the heart and not read.
and you did, and we thank you very much. Now, please state your name for the record, your position on the bill, who you represent.
Yes, sir. My name is Anita Summers. I am for the bill that Representative Lucio has so generously put up, and I am representing myself. So I am a 8.5-year disabled veteran from the United States Air Force, active duty. I've been I earned my Bachelor's of Science degree in cell and molecular biology with a minor in chemistry. I've been a medical professional for the past 11 years, and I've actually have a cannabis testimony myself. Unfortunately for me, I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis over 11 years ago. 74% of the nation deals with GI issues, so I know I'm not alone on that. Everyone's been talking about the opiates. Me personally, it was the opiates, the steroids, the antibiotics. They actually even started me on a chemo treatment the first 2 years of my ailment. My body was just broken down. Obviously, the side effects were way worse than the positive outcome. So I started to do my due diligence, and I traveled all over the country doing walkthroughs of farms, walkthroughs of labs, walkthroughs of dispensaries, because I wanted to know what Texas was holding back for me. So I did my due diligence, and while I was out on my travels, I actually had symptoms of a flare-up, and symptoms include dysentery, high fever, chronic lower abdominal pain. But for the first time, though, I actually was in a state that I had access to cannabis. I was in Nevada at the time. So for the first time, I used cannabis, but I used it as a cannabis suppository. It was local administration, the bioavailability was high, and for the first time in 10 years, I dodged the hospital. That's huge for me, and that's what kept me going with how did this work? The scientific method went through my mind. So after learning about patent 6630507, it clearly states the cannabinoids have medicinal therapeutic properties. So I just want to say thank you for your time. I appreciate it so much. I am not a criminal. I'm a patient looking for wellness with just nature, right, instead of the synthetic drugs. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Yes, sir. I think you know the routine. We ask you to state your full name for the record, your position on the bill, who you represent.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it. My name is Cameron Pinkerton. I'm here today representing myself wholeheartedly in favor of Representative Lucio's bill. I work for a criminal defense attorney in downtown Fort Worth. We mainly, 95% of our practice is marijuana possession and criminal interdiction stops. In addition to that, I'm a board member for DFW Normal, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Law. The field of substance abuse treatment, behavioral modification, and drug policy reform has occupied my life since I've been 11 years old. It's all I do. I use 1 to 2 grams of vaporized THC concentrate per week. I've used marijuana almost every single day since I was a child for, whether it's medicinal purposes or whatever you want to call it. And here I am today. That's the reason I'm able to stand before you, the person I am, a positive, productive member of my community. I'll spare you the details of all my upbringing, but I am a full-time college student with, obviously, the ties to my community I mentioned. And I take you back to, just being a 6th grader who missed the entire second semester of my 6th grade school year because I was admitted to a children's hospital, unable to walk, unable to eat, unable to drink, unable to do anything that a normal person would do. I was basically bedridden, and all they could do is say, well, you need to go see a specialist so you can see what you're doing because you have obviously severe anxiety and stress due to your lifestyle, which, again, I'm not going to go in detail. And, this is me being 11 or 12 years old. I'm not going to rush out of the hospital and try marijuana, but at the same time, as, going into my junior high years and having older brothers and siblings and things like that, I did try it. And before I got very involved and, really started to take this, marijuana issue, not for granted. I really started to look into it, doing a lot of research and things like that. And I realized after a while, all through my childhood until I was 11 years old, I was seeing a doctor a month, it felt like. And I haven't seen a doctor in almost 10 years now because I've been on marijuana every single day. And, I've seen the prohibitions of this plan affect patients' abilities to get employment, everything else, financial aid, housing, everything else, not to mention the fact that this plant, we're, depriving people from the medicine that, it could help them. We're treating them from criminals for having it. I've personally seen a person have their first seizure in years in a jail cell while being deprived of medical cannabis in the state of Texas. The way we're treating people is obviously, there's something wrong. If you want my from the heart, honest opinion of it, we need to legalize this. We don't need to treat anyone like a criminal for accessing something that grows out of the ground.
Thank you very much.
As I said earlier, veterans can't access the medicine that they fought to keep free. If it grows from the soil, they fought to keep free.
Thank you for your testimony. Members, any questions?
Can I just say
Thank
one
you
more
all.
thing? I'm watching my husband
Please
die.
identify yourself.
Mandy Hughes.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm watching my husband live in such severe pain because he's a diesel mechanic, and if he gets popped, he loses his job, and he will not take that chance because he will not risk the financial care he takes for our family. And he's living in so much pain that he can't function. Like, at the end of the day, he can't walk on his feet because of diabetic. And all I need is to be able to rub cream on his feet. Like, that's all I need to be able to do to be able to help him play with his kids. Like, this is just...
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Next panel, please. Zach Vance, Dalton O'Neill, Brad Phillips, Amy Harper. And again, folks, we ask if you have a script or a document you want to read, we ask that you give it to the clerk. They'll make a copy. We want to hear you speak. We want to hear it from the heart. We can read your document. All right. I'm going to call one more time. Zach Vance. Dalton O'Neill. So I take it one of you is Brad Phillips, and one of you... Amy Harper? Our registry's a little...
What's your name, sir?
Dalton. O'Neill.
Oh, okay. Very good. All right. Left to right. Full name. Give us your full name for the record, your position on the bill, and who you represent.
My name's Dalton O'Neill. I represent myself, and I am for Lucio's bill, Representative Lucio's bill. Thank you guys for taking the time to see us. Did I miss anything?
No.
Go? Okay, I just got to correct everybody. The record shows it's 10 p.m. Thank you guys so much for the consistency and the persistence of listening to all of us. I can only imagine. I was watching you guys on the House floor earlier, seeing you guys do what you do. I've changed my testimony about 10 times back there, being moved myself, because people are taking the one-liners. It's got to come straight for the heart. I want to give a new perspective to what this room has seen so far. I'm 24. I'm college-educated, political science. There's so much to this situation that everybody plays a part. The black market's thriving. It's not access that this group is missing. There's access. We're all aware of it. Right. It's safe access. Right. It's lab-tested cannabis that don't have heavy metals, that don't have all the nonsense that the black market is trying to go. It's just like cocaine back in the day when they're cutting it with everything. They're maximizing their profits, and the black market is getting squeezed out right now. It's now more than ever that we need comprehensive reform to protect the patients. Infectious disease community, they're the ones that need it. Now to my personal testimony. Take us back to 2012. This is before Colorado legalized recreational marijuana. My mom's dying of breast cancer. I'm smoking cannabis after football practice for fun because that's what we do. That's what was cool in high school. I would get it with my mom, the chemo. I understood chemo was hurting her. I understood it at the time. I didn't understand that it was medicine. I knew California was a hippie thing. I understood medical was a thing, but the science wasn't there. The research wasn't there. Fast forward, she wasn't a criminal. What I was helping do was medicating her at the time. I've taken a step back. I don't consume cannabis as much now as I used to, but it's medicine. It's clear cut. I'm an activist for the nausea community. I'm an activist for anybody that's had to deal with chemo and the poison they're putting inside of you. The GI that Anita mentioned is absolutely true. I'll just wrap it up with this. I'm really inspired to see the Republicans and Democrats take it serious. It's bipartisan, just like Danny mentioned. The Republican planks have this in our platform, and we need you guys to act. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for your testimony.
I believe we will.
State your full name for the record, position on the bill, who you represent, sir.
My name is Brad Phillips. I'm in support of House Bill 1365. I represent myself. I am a board-certified master arborist. I own a business with 80 employees that functions in 2 states. One of them is legal and one of them is here. I've been studying plants and trees for 21 years, and I've also consulted in the commercial cannabis industry in both Colorado and California. And I don't want to talk about any of those things, but I want you to understand I do come from an educated perspective. I've lost 2 brothers to the opioid epidemic. One of them to an overdose. with a synergistic reaction between Xanax, which was what was prescribed to him to help overcome his delirium tremors from his heroin. But when he relapsed, heroin and Xanax worked together at the same time, and he stopped breathing, and he died right there in the house after 7 years of battling a heroin addiction. He died at 22. And I cleaned up the mess, personally. I mopped up the remains of what was left of him, and you wouldn't have even needed mop water. My second brother shot himself in the face when his doctors were unable to continue to prescribe him the same amount of opioids because of an effort by the state of New York to cut down. It doesn't work that way. We know it doesn't work that way. You can't just cut it in half for somebody. Their brain won't work the same way. They'll be in absolute agony and misery, and he was. And he ended it, like many other people do. And he never asked for those drugs. He didn't ask for the disease that caused him to need pain relief. What we do know, out of all of these horrible things that I've just told you, is that according to the American Medical Association, 13 states that have had the longest access to legal, safe medical cannabis have experienced a 33% reduction in opioid overdose deaths. I could not name one thing that you could do that would have such a dramatic effect on such a horrible thing that's happening in our country. And I yield.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Members, any questions?
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next panel, Mitchell Raines. Mitchell Raines. Christopher Guy. Christopher Guy. Very good. Paul Stemko. Raina Sawyer. Or Rena Sawyer. One more. Louis Nakamoto. And again, those of you who've already testified, please yield to those who have not had a chance to testify. It's getting late. Left to right. Please state your full name for the record, position on the bill, and who you represent.
Good evening. I'm Paul Stemko. I'm for the bill. I'm representing the Texas Silver-Haired Legislature and myself.
Okay, sir.
The Texas Silver-Haired Legislature has been advocating for senior issues since 1987. In our 2018 legislative session held here in the House chamber, we passed our top 10 resolutions and our legislative priorities. Medical cannabis, the legalization of medical cannabis, was number 3, our number 3 resolution. On Texas Normal Senior Day, I walked the halls with a woman from Sun City named Carol Robertson, who's currently on chemotherapy. We were advocating for the legalization of medical marijuana. Carol wore a badge that said Sun City Republican Club, so she obviously introduced herself to all the legislators. Hi, I'm Carol with Sun City and with Sun City Republicans. I'm the vice chair of the Williamson County Democratic Party, so we made quite a team. Texas seniors are advocating and need, as you heard today by so many people, legalized medical marijuana, and Texas seniors vote. I thank you for your stamina today. Representative Lucio, thank you for your wonderful bill.
Thank you, sir. Please state your full name for the record, position on the bill, and who you represent.
Luis Nakamoto. I am for the bill, and I'm representing myself, my mother, also my partner who's not on the list, Mother's Botanicals, and San Antonio Normal.
Texas Silver Hair. Oh, I'm sorry. Mother Botanicals.
Not yet.
Very good.
Yes, Mother's Botanicals.
Okay.
So, like I've stated before, I am a Texas patient. I am currently living with HIV. I was diagnosed with depression when I was like 15, and I took that depression in my own hands when I was 18 and chose cannabis. Well, when I was found out about my diagnosis when I was 23 with HIV, it's not really what you want to hear when you're 23 years old, to say the least. But I knew what was ahead of me, and I will be on medication for the rest of my life. But the first 4 years of my diagnosis, I just didn't even want to think about what would happen, because my father, I watched him wither away on 15 medications a day by the time he died, by the time I was 15, that way. So I wasn't interested in any type of treatment. So living 4 years with HIV, not on treatment, I was always sick, inflammation, all sorts of different things were going on with my body. So I finally decided to medicate, and fortunately there is medicine available now that isn't as detrimental as it was for like the person that spoke earlier about on the same subject. So I'm pretty fortunate in a sense, but I know what's ahead of me, and I know that cannabis can definitely help. I'm not going to stop using cannabis, but I don't know if I'm going to stop going to jail. That's really on y'all in this legislature, this session. I did go to jail for over 36 hours one time, and not having my doses for that amount of time could be very detrimental to my health and my entire healing process. So I would just like not to keep putting myself at risk that way, and would like to have safe and legal access to cannabis. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Please state your name for the record, position on the bill, and who you represent, sir.
Yep. It's Christopher Guy, and I'm in favor, and I represent myself and the other thousands of Americans that can be helped by cannabis, based on the 56 conditions listed in the 507 patent. That's what we call the patent, is a 507 patent. So the federal government, I just want to give you the facts before I tell my story, because I will cry through my story. I already know that. So,
well, sir, I just want to remind you, 2 minutes.
Oh, yeah, okay. So the patent calls cancer neoplasia, and neoplasia is cancer, and that's what the patent calls it. So it's in the federal patent. We've funded this research through the NIH, through the HHS for however many years they've been doing this, and so they know all the information. If we're going to say who has the right authority or do we have enough evidence, I would refer to the HHS for it. All right, so this is my head. This is after a lot of radiation, a lot of chemo. One of the doctors that came up earlier was talking about glioblastoma. So GBM, that's what I was diagnosed with. This was 12 years ago, 13 years ago now. Most people don't make it past 14 months. They told me I'd have a couple of weeks just because of how big it was. So, yeah, I went through radiation, chemo, and all these different things that are easily treatable to some degree. And this is what the patent says: prevent, treat, reduce, arrest, delay, decrease symptoms, increase survival. So there are treatments, there are things that can be treated by cannabis completely into remission. So, yeah, basically, it was on the right side of my head, so it was right on my motor strip, so I developed a seizure disorder. I lost the function of my left hand. And so basically I'm on 5,000 milligrams of anti-seizure medications, 3 different ones every day. And I have an actual cancer genetic syndrome, so I have to have a colonoscopy. I was going to have it tomorrow. I had to call and cancel because this was running late. But I have a colonoscopy once a year. They pull out polyps every year. I have a endoscopy every 2 years, urinalysis. They check my skin. You can have up to 15 different types of cancer based on this genetic disorder. My dad died of cancer. His dad died of cancer. My aunt's got breast cancer, ovarian cancer. All different types of cancers run through this family. And so because of that, between the cancer and the neurology or the seizures, cannabis works on both of those clearly. Most of the evidence we have for cancer treatment is with glioblastoma, and it comes out of Spain. Something I just wanted to say is it's entirely unscientific to try and say that only research can be done on American soil will be accepted, because the whole standard of the scientific method is replicability, to be able to do it anywhere and everywhere. So data's data, whether it's on this side of the hemisphere or another. I know I'm taking a lot, so if you got questions, I'd love to be able to answer.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions for the panel?
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. In addition to this bill, I'd like to thank Representative Lucio for the pizza.
I'm sorry, please give your name.
Luis Nakamoto. And in addition to this bill, I would like to thank Representative Lucio for the pizza earlier. Thank you.
Yeah. You
Give us any pizza. Hey. I fed him outside.
You didn't give us pizza.
Where's my pizza? Could you make it gluten-free?
All right, next panel, please. Joshua Raines, Margaret Raines, Nishi Whitley, and Eric Espinosa.
Love you, Mom and Dad.
Who are we missing?
Eric Espinosa.
Eric Espinosa.
He was here.
He was hearing me.
Do we have a
Eric Espinosa.
He's out.
He's gone.
Okay, left.
He left. Who else were we at? It's a shame.
Suzanne Joseph? Josie. Again, folks, if y'all have a script, we ask you to not read it. We would like for y'all to speak from the heart. We can read your script. Left to right again.
Yes, sir. My name is Joshua Raines. I am for this bill, and I represent myself.
Thank you very much.
Okay. My name is Joshua Raines. I served in the 101st Airborne in the United States Army for 5 years. I did 2 deployments, in which my last one to Afghanistan, because of some IED explosions, gave me seizures and very bad PTSD. And so that wraps up basically why I use cannabis. Now, I wasn't right away, like I did things the right way. I went to the VA, I got on as many medications as I could to try to treat as ailments as I could, but I learned that I was a terrible parent. I was a terrible husband on it. And I would sit there and literally beg my wife to leave me. And if that happened, I would have killed myself. I'd have been a statistic at that point. She is, like Representative Lucio's wife, my savior, my hero. And so if it wasn't for her and what she did for me and sticking with me through all the hard times, I know that I wouldn't be able to do it despite cannabis. Now, cannabis is something that is a medicine not just for veterans with my conditions, but everybody with similar conditions. You have governmental patents, like just the one listed by Miss Anita, where she was saying, where she says if the government itself, 6630507, holds a patent on it, that means the medical research is already there. It's already there, already been done, to the extent that the United States government has a patent on medical cannabis. So that means that when you hear like, it's a gateway, there is no research, we just need more, it's already been done. You just have to go to your own statistics and your own government research, and it's there. The CDC reports to this day that cannabis has yet to kill a single human being upon consumption. Absolutely. It is in the CDC's records for that, whereas opioids and every other medication that you can have is tens of thousands of people per year. I cannot stress enough how important this is. I have lost more friends outside of here than in actual combat. And for me, it's just only a matter of time before I lose more. I'll close on one statement that if you listen to the words of it, it was said by Winston Churchill, and it was not about cannabis whatsoever. But if you listen to the words of it and you hear, you'll realize that it's for literally every single person in this room, and that's what it's meant for. And it is, the destiny of man is not measured by material compensations. When great forces are on the move in the world, we learn we're spirits and not animals. And he said there's something going on in time and space and beyond time and space, which whether we like it or not, spells duty. You and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We will help preserve for our children this the last best hope of man on earth, or we will sentence them to take the first steps into 1,000 years of darkness. And if it is darkness that they're going to be sent on, I have to walk every step of the way with them. So I thank you for all the help that you guys have done, and I appreciate hearing me out.
Thank you very much. Would you, yes, take your microphone. Please state your full name, position on the bill, and who you represent.
Yes, my name is Margaret Raines. I'm for the bill 1365.
We've been hearing great things about you, Margaret.
Oh, thanks. I got lucky too. But I'm in favor of it, as well as my whole family. They're behind me because, like I said earlier, I know I testified earlier, he fought for us, we fight together the end. I've never testified, so this is new for me. I'm always the one in the background encouraging. He's the fighter, I'm the lover. But the cool thing about being a military spouse is that you learn to fight when you didn't know that you could. And I've done that a lot with Josh, and the kids have too with Josh. And one of the things that has really scared me, my husband testified the first time 2107 last session, and we really found a lot of strength that we didn't know we had, to come out and say, hey, we need help, and our family needs help, and we're tired of hiding, and I'm tired of choosing whether I want to have my husband live with me and not become the 22 a day, because between now and then, the last bill that we testified, that almost happened. And he may not like me talking about it, but tough shit. Sorry, my language. But, you know, you just got to you got to roll with the punches. But I want to be here to say that as a military spouse, we struggle daily to upkeep not only ourselves, our children, but especially, most importantly, our well-deserved husband, who should be able to get out of bed and function every day. And with epilepsy on top of it, making it such a crazy, insane situation where you have PTSD triggering your epilepsy, and it's a never-ending circle for him. For us, CPS has been mentioned with good Lord, do I keep my husband alive, or do I have the possibility of losing my children? I've never been put in this situation. He fought for my freedom. He fought for your freedom. And all I ask is that you keep my husband around a little bit longer.
Thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Please state your full name, position on the bill, and who you represent.
Hello, my name is Nisha Whiteley. I am for the bill, and I represent myself. As a medical cannabis researcher and educator, and someone who serves medical cannabis companies in 6 countries, and a former caregiver for my mother who died of lung cancer and utilized cannabis at the end of her battle with cancer, I'd like to tell you a little bit about tetrahydrocannabinol and why I think that it should be available to Texas patients at their doctor's discretion. So thank you for the opportunity to do so.
I hope you're going to paraphrase.
I am.
Thank you.
Probably 6 phrases. So here we go. There is a tremendous amount of misinformation out there about cannabis, and people always say, oh, well, we don't have enough data. Well, the truth is that we have an enormous body of science about cannabis, and in fact, it is the most studied plant of the last 50 years. When you look on PubMed.gov, you'll see over 20,000 articles that have been written and published in peer-reviewed medical journals. That is significant, and what that has taught us is that cannabis is an incredibly safe medicinal agent, one of the safest available to man, in fact safer than aspirin. When we utilize CBD and THC together, what we find is that they are 4 times more therapeutic taken together than they are isolated. I'm not sure if you guys know this, but tetrahydrocannabinol from the cannabis plant actually mimics chemicals that our body produce that are critical to human health. This is why cannabis is such a safe, versatile, and effective medicine. These chemicals, whether they come from our bodies or the cannabis plant, actually activate receptors in the body that control immune function, proliferation of cancer, pain, all kinds of things. And so I heard my buzzer, so I know that my time is up, but I do want to point out that we happen to have 10 times more cannabis receptors in the brain than we do receptors for all of the other very well-studied pain relievers. And so with that, I would say I have barely begun to scratch the surface of the medical merits of cannabis and tetrahydrocannabinol. I hope you will let evidence be your guide and vote this out of committee with THC as an option for patients and their doctors. Patients are counting on you. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Please state your full name, position on the bill, and who you represent.
My name is Suzanne Josie. I am for the bill. I represent Mama and myself. 2.5 years ago, I did not know that Texas did not have a medical marijuana program. And the reason I did not know that was because I did not need to. It's kind of like all the research that's out there. I didn't have a reason to look. I am the mother of an adult child with autism, and she is not a person that you can see her disability very plainly. She is brilliant. Like, her IQ is above the 99.9th percentile, like off the IQ charts in some areas where they couldn't even test it. It's so high. And she's beautiful. She looks kind of like Scarlett O'Hara with dark hair and very fair skin. And she has used many pharmaceutical medications. We've lost count, something like 40, and she still uses a handful of them. But a few years ago, she encountered a similar kid to her, another boy with autism that is a very bright kid also, and he exposed her to the idea that cannabis is medicine for autism. And both of them struggle a lot with medications. They react horribly to them. Like, we've had 5 ER visits in a single year from attempted medication, pharmaceutical, the ones that FDA gives you. So anyway, after he exposed her to the idea, being a very analytical, research, black and white thinking person, she brought the idea to me, and I balked. Heck no, we don't do that kind of thing. We're, good, civilized Christian people that would never touch this illegal substance kind of thing. But also being autistic, she just kept at it. She kept texting me links and research and articles and testimonials and a link to mama. Thanks, daughter. So here I sit. Anyway, so I did some soul searching in response, and I came across the Bible verse, Micah 6:7-8. The Lord be pleased with thousands of rams or 10,000 rivers of oils. Shall I give my firstborn for my transgressions, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? And the answer is the next verse in there. He has told you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To seek justice. These people are not criminals. To love mercy, have some compassion, and to walk humbly with your God. And for me, that included knowing that my DARE campaign education was not everything I needed to know about medical marijuana.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Members, any questions for the panel? Thank you so much.
Can I add one thing? Just in my
your name?
My name is Joshua Rains. I'm for the bill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I thought that's what your testimony was going to be.
The last thing I wish that you guys would take out of this is that the main goal of this is that we're trying not to be legally dead. We're illegally alive right now, and honestly, for all of us, that is the main goal, is to not be legally dead.
Thank you.
So that's what we need help with.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next panel. Lori That's it. Paulo Garcia. Again, if you've already testified, okay, I was just going to say, if you've already testified, please let those other folks that haven't testified testify. Philip Andrade.
Everybody else made me cry.
Jeff LeBlanc. Katie LeBlanc.
Okay, so is Paulo not here?
No.
Philip here.
Is Philip Andrade here? Well, we got 3. See, we have Lori, Jeff, Kay, Jennifer, Cameron. Jennifer Cameron. Going once, going twice, 3 times. Oops. What? Okay. Jason Vaughn. Okay. Folks, before we get to the next 2 bills, y'all go to the last panel. So we still have a way to go. Anyways, thank you.
The GOP panel.
Please state your full name for the record, position on the bill, and who you represent.
Hi, my name is Lori Zapinski, and I represent myself, and I am here for the bill. I have diabetic neuropathy. I work in internet security and am fortunate enough to be able to travel to San Francisco several times a year, and under the recommendation of a doctor, use medical cannabis there. also use it here illegally, but one of the most effective treatments I've found for the neuropathy is an actual high THC transdermal patch that has no psychoactive effects at all, but it completely takes care of the neuropathic pain. So my feet are honestly on fire 99 all the time when I'm in Texas, but when I'm in California, I'm able to use this patch that doesn't get you high and takes care of the pain. It's pretty amazing. I don't take opiates. I don't take gabapentin. Doesn't work, so there's no point in spending money on it. And August 17th, 2017, my husband and I lost his 26-year-old son to a heroin overdose. So, yeah, it's probably the worst thing my family has ever been through. And so thank you, and please change the laws in Texas. We need this.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Please state your full name, position on the bill, who you represent.
Kay LeBlanc. I am for HB 1365. I represent myself, and I forgot to put it, but also the Republican Liberty Caucus of Texas. I am a board member. I'm 45 years old, and when I was 29, I was diagnosed with what we thought was diabetic neuropathy. My neurologist has since determined that it was actually most likely caused by an autoimmune disease, and I began testing for lupus in 10 days. It affects my ability to walk. My balance is trashed. I have no sensation on the outside of my feet. But I constantly feel like my feet are on fire with these intermittent shocks. They feel like I'm getting poked with a cattle prod. I don't drive very often because I'm scared that that's going to happen and I'm going to slam on the brake or the accelerator, and I actually got into an accident yesterday before we came here. I haven't worked in 10 years. I have been taking methadone, which 15 years ago the government told me this is fine and this is the medication you need to take. Now the government is telling me that I'm some sort of a junkie and they're trying to take it away from me. I wasn't going to admit this, but I've been vaping cannabis oil with a high level of THC for about 4 months now. The first time I did it, I was at a wedding out of state. A friend of mine offered it to me. I'd been taking 40 milligrams of methadone a day at the time and still constantly in pain. And now, the night that I did that, I didn't have to take any medicine. I slept a full night for the first time in years. And that's part of what I've been experiencing lately. The one other thing I want to say is people are talking about these opiates are poison. They are. It's damaged my liver and my heart, my digestive tract. I've lost all my teeth. I'm 45 years old and I've lost over half of my teeth. And because I'm disabled and on Medicare, I have no dental insurance and I can't get it fixed. So I actually look like I probably was a junkie, and I'm not. But the drugs that have been prescribed to me, not only the opiates, but 2 of them have almost killed me. One that I took for 4 years that suddenly gave me life-threatening side effects I got off of. One of them was a new drug they prescribed to me, and I ended up in the ER, where my ER doctor told my husband that this stuff is poison. These people need access to cannabis.
Thank you. Please state your full name, position on the bill, and who you represent.
Jeff LeBlanc. I am testifying in favor of the bill, and I am also speaking as the chairman of the Republican Liberty Caucus of Texas. This is a cross-partisan issue.
You're also speaking for yourself.
Yes.
Thank you.
And this, since you don't want us to use scripts, this is my wife. You've heard from her. I've known my wife since we were in elementary school. We've been married for 24 years. I have watched opiates take my wife from me. Okay? the minimal amount she needs just to survive, so she doesn't want to kill herself from the pain. Keeps her in bed most of the time. My wife coming here is so rare. You guys just don't even know. And when we have access to it, we use cannabis. And you know what? I'm proud to be a criminal for that. And I will the rest of my life to keep my best friend with me from the damage, the poison it's causing that y'all say is acceptable legally. And that's it.
Thank you, sir. Please state your full name for the record, position on the bill, who you represent.
My name is Jason Vaughn. I'm here representing myself and the Texas Young Republicans, and we are for the bill.
And you also registered self-balloon artist?
It says position. That's what I do for a living.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
If you've got kids, come call me. Sorry, I did not expect to actually have to go after two good friends of mine, and actually see somebody that I've known actually do so much better the last few months. So that is a blessing. But anyway, I apologize. Now I'm getting back on track.
Yeah, and don't read your script. Just talk to us.
I don't have a script. Don't worry. So anyway, I represent Texas Young Republicans. This is a priority issue for us. This is the bill that we actually think is most coherent with the Texas Republican Party plank. I will read the plank. It says, Compassionate Use Act. We call upon the Texas Legislature to improve the 2015 Compassionate Use Act to allow doctors to determine the appropriate use of cannabis to certified patients. And that is been in there for 2 sessions now. So it is not something that just got put in there and to randomly get yanked out. And we have many members. We have 2,000 members and about 40 clubs. Some of those members are using cannabis, some for medical issues. We have a mama in one of our organizations. That's Myra Rivera. That is her statement here. The paragraph there, and I'm not going to read it, so it's there for you guys. But also in a personal statement, the year I graduated high school, my mother got breast cancer. She, at the same time, her mother, my grandmother, developed lung cancer, and it really just ravaged her entire body. She was no longer with us, unfortunately, just like there was nothing there. And unfortunately, my mom was working as a pharmacy technician at the time. It's not something you want to do when you are on opioids. She unfortunately made the very poor decision to create her own little Ponzi scheme where she would take some extra opioids for her or my grandmother and then put them back, and with the hope, next month I can put those back. And then it never ended up happening. She ended up getting caught, losing her job. Thankfully did not go to college and ultimately did turn her life around. Was able to get off of that and is now married to an officer. I also spent a summer in a halfway house. And so I've seen all forms of this. And I can tell you that the one thing I do know is that the black market is what ultimately leads people to using heroin, leads people to using these harder drugs. Some of you are Amazon Prime members. I can tell you, if you go to Amazon, the number one thing you'll see whenever you check out is, you bought this. Other people that bought this also like this. Drug dealers are just like Amazon Prime.
Thank you very much. Members, are there any questions for the panel? Thank you so much, folks.
Thank you for being here.
Is there anyone else here wishing to testify on, for, or against HB 1365? If not, testimony on HB 1365 is now closed, and the chair recognizes Chairman Lucio to close on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and let me commend you on running an efficient committee. I know people have a lot of emotions they want to share, but everybody had an opportunity to speak, so I commend you for that.
Well, I appreciate it. I do apologize if I appeared short with some folks, but we had over 60 witnesses to get through, so thank you.
Maybe our job is to get this to the Senate and let them go testify a little bit more over that.
Yeah, that's right.
This is my 7th term, folks, and nothing draws up the emotions like working on this bill and helping families. I mean, if we're here for anything, it's to help Texas families. This is not a partisan issue. And I have, in now the few years I've been working on it, yet to have anyone, Democrat, Republican, young, old, my own family, pull me aside and say, what are you thinking by making this your priority issue? Everyone seems to understand and appreciate what this can do to improve the quality of life of many, many, many families. So I ask you for your support. I think we can do wonderful work together. I was talking with Chairman Frank about tightening up language to make sure that what is getting in the hands of Texans is good product, that we make sure that as we move forward, science is driving what we do to expand compassionate use, and putting those with true expertise in a position to make it more and more available to Texans.
Thank you,
Can I ask
Chairman. Members, any questions for?
Just one. If we get this passed and is part of the Republican Party plank, will we have an additional member?
Don't you dare!
Sorry, it's late.
Pass the bill. It's nice to be wanted. Hey. Appreciate that. Thank you. With that, I close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, the chair moves to leave HB 1365 pending. Are there any objections? Chair has none. So ordered.